All of this was initially excellent promotional material and would greatly enhance the cohesion of civilization. But now, both Lu Went and Hong Shan felt that these matters were so ironic. In the secure communication room, the high-ranking officials of both fleets wore somber expressions, filled with anger and sorrow that had nowhere to vent. After several minutes of silence, the two commanders adjusted their mindsets with remarkable emotional control. No matter what had happened in the past, it was just that, past. As the highest commanders of their fleets, they could only look forward. Lu Wen said coldly, "I have ample reason to suspect that the enemy's careful planning and restraint are aimed at making us turn against each other and weaken our strength." Hong Shan's tone was equally icy. "I agree with your view. Since the enemy wants us to lower our strength to the current level before revealing themselves, it seems to indicate that their strength is not as outstanding as we imagined. We are not without the strength to fight back. Of course, this has one significant prerequisite." The pressure brought on by the severed communication links eased somewhat after speculating that the enemy's strength might not be as formidable as previously thought. The fact that communication links were cut was indeed shocking and weighed heavily on their minds. However, it now appeared that the enemy likely employed some kind of clever method. Although they had no knowledge of what this method was, it probably did not involve advanced technology. If that is the case, they were not invincible. In response to Hong Shan's words, Lu Wen was also rapidly calculating in his mind, assessing the expected risks and benefits, and considering feasibility. He was well aware of what that so-called significant prerequisite was: joint cooperation. Only by uniting could they have a fighting chance against that unknown force. But after fighting fiercely for so many years, could they really just unite now? Regardless of the reasons for their conflict, whether for profit or provoked by others, the losses on both sides had already been immense, and the hatred was palpable. Some things, even if known to be right, could not be done due to the situation and internal pressures. Perhaps if he announced a partnership with the enemy, he would immediately be shot by the enraged warriors within his own ranks. Moreover, could the enemy truly be trusted? What if this was another conspiracy? What if, at a critical moment, they turned against them? The entire fleet was completely annihilated in this star system, which could even impact the strategic situation of the entire civilization, leading to a significant decline and a complete loss of strategic opportunities, relegating it to a secondary status. This matter involves too many complexities and considerations, making the decision extremely challenging. However, Lu Wen proved to be a commander with a high strategic vision. After thoroughly considering all factors and confirming that unity was the only option, while also having sufficient control over the fleet to suppress opposing voices, he faced the screen where the equally serious commander of the Blue Moon civilization, Hong Shan, was present and nodded solemnly. "Then we shall unite. Our grievances can be discussed after we repel this unknown force. Also, while we join forces against this unknown entity, we must do everything possible to restore communication with our home civilization. It is our duty. There was no time to waste. We must start negotiations immediately." The comprehensive unification of the two fleets cannot simply be achieved through a verbal agreement between the commanders. The modes of interaction, defense zones, command systems, logistics support systems, and many other aspects need detailed plans and clear delineation of responsibilities, requiring the involvement of numerous staff members. It would likely take at least 2 months to complete this. Meanwhile, the enemy could arrive in just 6 months. The urgency of the situation necessitates immediate planning. After this, the fleets of the two civilizations began to move frequently within the star system, all of which was observed by Chen Yu. After careful calculation and contemplation, Chen Yu finally confirmed a fact. The Blue Moon civilization and the Southern Star civilization had set aside their past grievances and formed an alliance. The speed at which the two fleets reached an agreement and officially joined forces was beyond Chen Yu's expectations. This was not good news for him. Chapter 176. Perfect Defense Strategy. Chen Yu initially believed that after hundreds of years of conflict, both sides had suffered significant casualties and harbored deep resentment, so much so that it could be described as a blood feud. Even if they realized that unity was the only way out, they would likely need to inflict pain upon each other in the core of the star system before finally uniting. Who would have thought they would join forces so quickly? Based on the development of the situation, it appeared that the opposing side finalized their alliance within less than 2 days after they had just exposed their vulnerabilities and immediately began high-efficiency follow-up arrangements. Was it really necessary to be so extraordinary? Chen Yu felt somewhat speechless. The highest leaders of both civilizations were impressive enough, but now, with communications with their home civilizations cut off, these two fleet commanders were equally formidable. They recognized the correct strategic direction so quickly and had such strong control over their respective fleets that they could suppress internal dissent. Could the deep-seated hatred really be set aside so easily? If the two top military strategists within human civilization, Aodhwa and Majhwa, were to command these two fleets instead of Chen Yu, he was confident that neither of them could achieve this step, even if it were himself in that position. While he would likely end up taking a similar path, the decision-making process would not be as swift. The gap between individuals is truly vast. They are all talents. Chen Yu couldn't help but sigh. It is essential to strive to bring these two under his command. At that moment, he truly understood the feeling of longing. However, at this stage, a fierce battle must take place. Without thoroughly defeating them and dispelling their will to resist, he wouldn't gain their hearts, let alone their bodies. The human fleet was still in high-speed maneuvering. Ahead, the two major civilization fleets at the core of the galaxy were rapidly mobilizing. Chen Yu observed that on several rocky planets, hundreds of thousands of military factories belonging to the two fleets were working tirelessly to produce war supplies. Numerous heavy transport ships were shuttling through space, delivering vast amounts of energy, medicine, food, ammunition, and other supplies to the logistics bases. Many warships were quickly being repaired or resupplied at logistics support or maintenance bases and space docks. The fleets united to achieve combat readiness quickly occupied advantageous coordinates to protect each planet while providing mutual cover and support. Some smaller planets were even directly destroyed by the two fleets. With the energy of large hydrogen bombs, if positioned appropriately, some small asteroids could be shattered, though larger ones could not. At this moment, Chen Yu observed that all asteroids with a diameter of about 50 kilometers or less were shattered, while those over 50 kilometers had stationed defense fleets. This was clearly a strategy of scorched earth, aiming to prevent him from receiving any supplies within the Wangliang three-star system. This struck at his sore spot. Chen Yu thought to himself, they have clearly deduced that he had been lurking in space for a long time without resupply. To continue the war, the most crucial point was to occupy a resource planet to obtain supplies. Now, with the smaller planets destroyed and even slightly larger ones having defense forces capable of rapid mutual support, they aimed to cut off his routes. It was evident that the opponent had resolved not to take risks and instead to hold their positions, fully utilizing their convenient resupply while denying him any. Even if they couldn't exhaust him, time was on their side. They were undoubtedly making every effort to restore communication with their home civilization. Once communication was re-established, new changes would surely occur. Although they couldn't yet determine what those changes would be, they would certainly be advantageous to them and disadvantageous to him. After all, if that weren't the case, why would his invading fleet go to such lengths to cut off communications before launching an attack? From Chen Yu's perspective, the arrangement of the two fleets was simply impeccable, without a single flaw. Even if it were himself in this situation, he would have arranged the defense of the star system in the same way. However, unfortunately, this was of no use. Chen Yu shook his head inwardly. For ordinary enemies, this plan was indeed perfect. But for him, it was useless. Chen Yu continued to accelerate rapidly with the highest mobility, moving forward swiftly. As the distance closed, the situation within the Wangliang three-star system became increasingly tense. When the distance shrank to less than 10 billion kilometers, an electromagnetic wave signal came from the direction of the core of the star system. Visitors from afar. This is the joint fleet stationed by the Southern Star Civilization and the Blue Moon Civilization. The sovereignty of this star system belongs to both of us. We are all peace-loving civilizations and do not wish to conflict with any entity. If you have any demands, please put them forward, and we can resolve them peacefully through negotiation. Should you insist on provoking a dispute, we are confident in protecting our territory. This message was accompanied by dictionary information. However, even without the dictionary, Chen Yu could translate it, as he had already mastered the language of the Southern Star people. Clearly, as the moment approached, both fleets were making efforts to avoid conflict. But for Chen Yu, this sincere goodwill was misplaced. He paid no attention to it and continued to focus on maneuvering. Chen Yu's goal was evident. It was the largest planet in the Wangliang three-star system. This was a rocky planet larger than Earth. If he could occupy this planet, he would not have to worry about insufficient logistical supplies for a considerable time. Of course, the other side was certainly well aware of this. Chen Yu observed that this planet, designated as Planet 1, was the core of the defensive system for both of their fleets. If a battle was to be fought, it should be against the hardest target. Taking down smaller targets would be meaningless. Capturing Planet 1 would solidify his foothold and significantly impact their morale. At this moment, they were still tens of billions of kilometers away, far from entering the normal combat range. However, for a fixed, non-maneuverable giant planet, launching an attack from this distance was entirely feasible. With a command from Chen Yu, over 100,000 warships simultaneously activated their electromagnetic energy cannons and began to fire in unison. In total, among the 150,000 warships deployed by Chen Yu, there were 15 Dwarf Planet-class warships, 3,000 Comet-class warships, 20,000 Nebula-class warships, and approximately 127,000 Stardust-class warships. At this moment, Chen Yu had 20 Dwarf Planet-class warships, but only deployed 15 of them. The remaining 5 Dwarf Planet-class warships, including his flagship, along with about 30 Other various types of ships, such as residential ships, engineering ships, research vessels, and exploration ships, remained in the rear and did not participate in this conflict. Ensuring personal safety was the top priority. For this reason, Yu did not hesitate to allocate several thousand warships to protect himself. Of course, deploying 150,000 warships is more than sufficient. Yu is confident of victory. What kind of might would it be for 150,000 large, medium, and small interstellar warships to fire together? Even Yu has never witnessed such a scene, as he has never had the opportunity to do so before. Similarly, the highest commanders of the two civilizations, the Southern Star and the Blue Moon, have never seen it either. Typically, a robust third-tier civilization only has about 100,000 warships in total. In the three battlefields of Wangliang, both sides invested about half of their total military strength. At most, there were around 100,000 warships in the Wangliang system. Now, this scene has vividly appeared before Yu and the commanders and warriors of the two major civilizations. With 150,000 warships, there are approximately 22.5 million electromagnetic energy cannons of various types. These cannons have different firing rates, averaging about 3 projectiles per second per cannon. With 22.5 million cannons, that amounts to 67.5 million projectiles per second, which translates to 2.43 trillion projectiles in an hour, and about 60 trillion projectiles in a day. Such a massive number of projectiles is rapidly flooding toward Planet 1 at incredibly high speeds. At this moment, Hong Shan and Lu Went, who have been closely monitoring the incoming enemy, opened their eyes wide in shock. They have never witnessed such a formidable attack. At this moment, these electromagnetic projectiles have not yet reached Planet 1. If they were warships, they would be far beyond the escape zone and could easily evade. However, the concept of an escape zone does not exist for planets, as they cannot maneuver and can only endure the assault. But on Planet 1, there are countless logistical supply facilities belonging to the Southern Star civilization and numerous factories. If these factories are destroyed, the Southern Star fleet would be rendered incapable of fighting. Alone, they cannot withstand such an onslaught. No energy shield, no matter how powerful, could endure this many projectiles. In a flash of thought, Lu Wen immediately made a decision and decisively sought assistance from Hong Shan. The enemy's main target seems to be Planet 1. We cannot withstand it alone. Requesting support. Planet 1 is too crucial for the Southern Star fleet, being the core of their operations. In the past, even a slight approach from the Blue Moon fleet would make Lu Wen anxious for hours, fearing any mishap. But now, he has opened his heart to this old adversary. If this old foe had any other intentions, it would be like stabbing himself in the chest, potentially crippling the entire fleet. Yet, at this critical moment, in the face of danger, Lu Wen still made this decision. Hong Shan responded decisively, "Don't worry." After ending the conversation with Lu Wen, Hong Shan immediately issued orders to all levels of commanders in his fleet. Immediately head to support the defense line of Planet 1. Listen carefully during the support process. Be cautious with your words and actions, and make sure not to cause any misunderstandings. Anyone who violates the orders will be executed immediately. Yes, Hong Shan knew very well that this was not the time for internal strife. Even though the heart of the old rival, the Southern Star civilization, was laid bare before him, he had to control himself from taking this opportunity to strike. He understood the principle of when the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold. Immediately, the core of the Wangliang 3-star system, with numerous fleets, began to maneuver again. The defensive forces in other areas started to move towards Planet Number 1 at the fastest speed. According to previous discussions, the Southern Star civilization's fleet also ceded corresponding defense areas to be guarded by their old rivals. Within the Southern Star fleet, Lu Wen repeatedly emphasized the need for caution and close cooperation, insisting that every maneuver must be communicated in advance to avoid misunderstandings. The principle of when the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold was understood by both Hong Shan and Lu Wen. This scene once again shocked Yu. The heart of the Southern Star civilization was thus presented before the Blue Moon civilization. What boldness! Was he not afraid that the Blue Moon civilization would take the opportunity to stab him in the back? Could Commander Hong Shan really resist the temptation to exploit this chance? If he could truly hold back, then Yu would have to raise his evaluation of him even higher. Everyone understands the principle of when the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold. But when faced with such a great opportunity, how many can truly resist temptation? How many commanders possess enough prestige and means to ensure their subordinates follow orders and remain aligned with them? Before the electromagnetic projectile cluster arrived, the vast fleet of the Blue Moon civilization had already maneuvered into position, taking over the defense area ceded by the Southern Star fleet, with their guns pointed outward, showing no reluctance towards the heart of the Southern Star fleet that was exposed. Seeing this scene, Yu felt excited. They had truly become such worthy opponents. Fighting them would be interesting. Today, let them see that no matter how united and wise they are, against absolute strength, it is of no use at all. Just as the two fleets merged and began their defense, the massive electromagnetic projectile cluster had already arrived. At that moment, intense combat finally broke out. The total number of warships from both fleets was only 380,000, yet at this moment, over 260,000 warships were gathered around planet number 1, accounting for about 70 of their total strength. Countless interceptors were launched simultaneously from every warship, from every interstellar artillery platform and military satellite orbiting planet number 1, and from every ground artillery position, all with the same fierce and resolute momentum, charging towards the trillions of projectiles approaching from afar. Moreover, some of the projectiles were not interceptors, but were directly aimed at the human fleet hidden behind the projectile cluster. Chapter 178, the light screen at this moment. Facing the immense force of the human fleet, the joint fleet of Blue Moon and Southern Star was not only considering passive defense, but also counterattacks. At this moment, in the video call, Hong Shan's expression was filled with determination, based on the energy density, speed, and firing rate of the electromagnetic projectiles. I believe that the technological level of the unknown fleet's warships is far inferior to that of our own, and correspondingly, their combat capability is also far behind us. They are relying solely on numbers. Lu Went said solemnly. That's right, we are not without opportunities in this war. The two commanders both recognized this crucial premise. With this major premise established, the upcoming battles would be much easier to fight. Faced with the overwhelming offensive from the enemy, the two discussed and jointly decided not only to defend, but also to counterattack when the opportunity arose. At that moment, countless electromagnetic projectiles, in an excited state and possessing extremely high energy, collided violently in the vastness of space. Under the watchful eyes of this massive rocky planet and the even larger two stars, countless brilliant flowers bloomed in interstellar space, connecting with one another like a dazzling curtain of light. If viewed through an optical telescope, Xinyu could no longer see the shadow of the first planet, only a sea of brightness that obscured even the depths of the universe. And this was merely the prelude to the comprehensive battle. Faced with the incoming electromagnetic projectiles targeting their fleet, under Chen control, a total of 150,000 warships began to intercept. However, Chen quickly realized that, against projectiles of such high speed and energy, the interception was not very effective. The overall interception success rate was only 10. Once they entered the no-escape zone, 90 of the projectiles still targeting their warships would have to be endured by the energy shields of the ships. If the number of projectiles were smaller, it might be manageable, but once the quantity increased, the energy shields would quickly become overwhelmed. Without the protection of energy shields, the thin armor was no match for the energy projectiles, which could easily tear through them, potentially even causing the entire warship to be pierced and ripped apart. Right from the first clash, nearly 1,000 warships from the human fleet were directly annihilated. In contrast, the massive offensive from their own electromagnetic projectile cluster had only managed to destroy fewer than 500 enemy warships. The disparity in strength was astonishing. A casualty ratio of 2 to 1 would be enough to dishearten any commander, even causing them to lose confidence in continuing the fight. However, this high casualty ratio did not make Xinyu feel angry. Instead, he was filled with excitement. My original plan was to aim for a casualty ratio of 5 to 1, which would be considered good. Now achieving a ratio of 2 to 1 is a huge gain. If this could be maintained, it would mean I only need to lose less than half of my ships to annihilate the enemy completely. But Chen Yu was well aware that this was merely wishful thinking. It was impossible to maintain a 2 to 1 casualty ratio on the real battlefield. The current achievement was still due to the sheer scale of his electromagnetic projectile cluster. In the midst of fierce combat, both sides were attacking and intercepting each other, while Chen Yu was doing his utmost to shorten the distance between them, trying to enter close combat. Close combat was the most advantageous for Chen Yu, as it allowed for a greater variety of combat methods and weapons, such as mini-missiles, laser cannons, interstellar mines, military satellites, electromagnetic bombs, and graphite bombs, all of which could be unleashed on the battlefield. At the same time, close combat meant that the battlefield situation would become more chaotic. Clearly, for Chen Yu, who was integrated with a computer, the more chaotic the situation, the more it favored his performance. Choosing Planet 1 as the main target was partly due to this reason. As there was no way for the enemy to retreat, they could only hold their ground and be forced into close combat. During the ongoing long-range exchanges, Chen Yu managed to inflict a loss of about 3,000 enemy ships at the cost of losing 10,000 of his own, ultimately reaching the vicinity of Planet 1. The close combat finally began. What kind of scene would it be to have around 170,000 to 180,000 warships fiercely colliding around a planet? This was a sight that neither Chen Yu nor his companions, Hong Shan and Lu Went had ever witnessed before. Despite having mentally prepared themselves, they still felt a sense of shock when this scene unfolded before their eyes. At that moment, standing on the surface of Planet 1 and looking up at the sky, there was no longer any distinction between day and night. Whether facing the side of the star or the opposite side, the sky had turned a uniform bright white, as if a massive light shield completely enveloped the planet. In this bright white sky, fiery meteors were continuously falling rapidly, crashing to the ground. Regardless of whether the surface was dirt, dust, or hard rock, the result was the same. A large pit was easily created, followed by a violent explosion. The meteors included those falling from the sky as well as those launched upwards. The Southern Star Civilization's fleet had deployed defensive forces on the surface of Planet 1, with land-based electromagnetic energy cannons arranged in neat formations. Each formation contained dozens to thousands of cannons, and there were over 10,000 such formations on the planet's surface, with the total number of land-based electromagnetic energy cannons likely reaching millions. A simultaneous launch would see tens or even thousands of bright meteors soaring from the surface into space, aggressively attacking the enemy ships. When enemy projectiles approached, intercepting missiles would also be launched. Even if they couldn't be intercepted, it didn't matter, as every electromagnetic energy cannon formation was covered by a bright yellow energy shield, blocking all attacks from the outside. Such energy shields were ubiquitous on the surface of Planet 1. Not only the electromagnetic energy cannon formations, but other buildings and facilities, such as fusion power plants, mines, vacuum transportation systems, forges, metal processing plants, component factories, assembly factories, and many others, amounting to at least over 1 million factories and facilities, each had a heavy energy shield above them. With Planet 1 as the core, the entire battlefield has turned into a chaotic mess, resembling a colorful abstract painting. In such circumstances, Lu Went and Hong Shan are increasingly alarmed as they fight. The enemy is incredibly reckless, seemingly not valuing their own lives at all. This kind of enemy is something the two have never encountered before. Chapter 179. Meat Grinder. Hundreds of thousands of enemy warships are rampaging through space, fearlessly adhering to the principle of minimizing losses. For instance, if a warship can sacrifice itself to save 2 others, it will immediately and unhesitatingly take on the fire, while the 2 saved ships will escape without even a glance at the one that sacrificed itself, as if devoid of emotion. Coupled with the extraordinary maneuverability of these ships, which can accelerate or decelerate at rates reaching hundreds of meters per square second, this has put the Southern Star and Blue Moon Coalition forces at a significant disadvantage. Both Hong Shan and Lu Wen increasingly suspect that these ships are unmanned. But how could unmanned ships operate so skillfully, coordinate so precisely, and react so quickly, even surpassing manned vessels? This contradicts the most basic military theories. It is not something intelligent life could achieve. The enemies they face this time make these top military strategists feel as though their worldview is being overturned. Commander, confirmed. The enemy ships are unmanned. A staff officer rushed in, facing Hong Shan and the commander of the Southern Star Fleet, Lu Went, in the video feed. Gritting his teeth, he reported, "We intentionally searched the wreckage of 16 enemy ships and found no life support systems or any remains of intelligent beings. They really are unmanned vessels." The ability to operate unmanned ships to this extent seems to indicate that the enemy possesses extremely advanced technology. However, the performance of the enemy's ships is clearly inferior to their own. The electromagnetic energy cannons lack sufficient power, the energy shields are not strong enough, the spy satellites underperform, and the interstellar mines, while numerous, are not very powerful and have a slow attack speed. There is almost a comprehensive performance gap. At this moment, both top military strategists find themselves somewhat confused. Now is not the time to clarify these issues. Lu Went decisively made a decision. Everything will be discussed after this battle. I agree. The two cast aside all doubts and once again focused intently on analyzing the current battlefield situation, discussing subsequent arrangements and tactics. Behind them, each had a large staff of over 10,000, controlling numerous information channels, diligently collecting all battlefield information and presenting it in data form for the two strategists to make decisions. On the human fleet side, Chen Yu has only a few hundred military advisors behind him. At this moment, Mo Zhua, Ao Duo, Yun Guang, and others are also seriously studying the battlefield situation, analyzing the opponent's intentions, and continually offering suggestions to Chen Yu. Every suggestion was thrown into the battlefield model by Chen Yu for simulation. Useful tactics were immediately implemented, while ineffective ones were discarded right away, along with feedback on the reasons for their rejection, allowing the intelligent life consultants to make further improvements. In addition to the suggestions from the consultants, Chen Yu also generated a large number of tactics through his own calculations and began simulations. On average, over 100,000 ideas surged in Chen Yu's mind every second, all undergoing simultaneous simulations. At the same time, he had to control hundreds of thousands of warships, managing every electromagnetic cannon, every engine, every nuclear fusion reactor, every detector and monitor on those ships, as well as every military satellite and artillery position on the battlefield, and every interstellar mine, gathering and analyzing thousands of new intelligence pieces from the battlefield. At this moment, Chen Yu's focus was more than just singular. It was beyond a trillionfold. Inside the human battleship, his brain had entered a state of full computational operation. Although the supercomputer had adopted superconducting technology, resulting in very low heat generation, under full operation, the liquid helium used for cooling the core still showed signs of boiling, forcing Chen Yu to maximize the cooling system's output. The portion of computational power reserved for emergency repairs was on high alert, ready to undertake maintenance on the supercomputer where Chen Yu resided. The consequences of a computer malfunction leading to the destruction of tens of thousands of warships were too dire to contemplate. Such a situation was absolutely unacceptable. In this context, intense combat continued. The 15 dwarf planet-class warships deployed to the battlefield were dispersed to occupy 15 critical coordinates around Planet 1. Chen Yu organized the offensive and defensive strategies centered around these warships, assigning the tougher tasks to them, while smaller and medium-sized warships were primarily used to eliminate smaller targets. This strategy was fundamentally steady and cautious. Despite the fierce fighting at the beginning of the war, Chen Yu was actually playing conservatively. Although he had been observing the battle for a long time, it was his first time personally engaging, and he needed to have a thorough understanding of the opponent to plan the next tactical moves. However, despite being cautious, Chen Yu's warships were still being consumed at an astonishing rate. In just 2 days since close combat began, the number of warships under his command had reduced from 140,000 to about 120,000, resulting in the loss of roughly 20,000 ships. In contrast, the opponent had only lost about 400-500 ships, with the loss ratio barely below 5 to 1. Under normal fleet circumstances, such a situation would have been unbearable, but only Chen Yu could withstand it. The rate of warship attrition could indeed be described as a warship meat grinder. Nevertheless, Chen Yu was well aware that these skirmishes were merely minor conflicts. He had already figured out the opponent's combat style and was ready to execute the next tactical move. The next tactical step is destined to be even more brutal than now, with the intensity of the battle increasing further and the warships suffering losses at a higher rate. Chen Yu has already decided to forcefully penetrate the enemy's defense line and directly land on the planet to occupy and defend it. This requires him to concentrate his strength and attack a specific point. The enemy, without needing to think, will definitely take countermeasures. He will fight to break in, while the enemy will fight to block him. Let us go, let us begin. Let us see if your flesh and blood can withstand my Iron Dragon. Chen Yu roared in his heart, decisively issuing orders to maneuver 15 dwarf planet-class warships, which are responsible for core battlefield duties, toward one side of the designated planet. Upon sensing the changes on the battlefield and Chen Yu's movements, the top military strategists Hong Shan and Lu Went felt not anxiety or fear, but instant joy. With their military expertise, they quickly judged the opponent's strategic intentions. Clearly, the enemy was not satisfied with the current steady approach and was about to embark on a military adventure, attempting at all costs to seize the designated planet. Although during the previous stalemate phase, their side had the advantage of ample logistical supplies while the enemy, coming from afar, could not obtain any support. They could afford to take their time, gradually wearing down the enemy's readiness and easily winning the war. However, there are two sides to every situation. The two commanders realized that although their side had a significant chance of victory under the previous warfare model, the casualties would be too high. Once the opponent embarked on a military adventure, their offensive would be even more frenzied, leading to greater losses for them in the short term. Yet, from an overall perspective, the total casualties would decrease. Moreover, the more intense the enemy's offensive, the more supplies they would consume in a short time, exposing their logistical vulnerabilities. In this way, the situation would become more favorable for their side. Of course, to achieve this advantage, one major premise must be met. They must withstand the enemy's frenzied offensive and cannot allow the enemy to truly breach their defense line. Even if the line is breached, they cannot allow the enemy to occupy the planet and gain supplies from it. If that happens, the balance of power could easily shift. However, the two commanders, who already had a sufficient understanding of their opponent, were confident at this moment. 15 dwarf planet-class warships were braving the barrage of fire, leading their fleet in a difficult approach. As Chen Yu maneuvered hundreds of thousands of warships, he rapidly contemplated in his mind. Although he had determined early on during the initial stalemate phase that after obtaining enough intelligence on the opponent, he would change tactics, concentrating his forces to attack a specific point with the aim of breaking the enemy's defense line and occupying this planet. He had full confidence in this strategy and almost guaranteed success. Nevertheless, the rationale behind this tactic also stemmed from certain logistical supply limitations on their side. Ultimately, I cannot provide logistical support, so I can only find ways to mitigate this disadvantage. It's best to avoid prolonged attrition warfare if possible and strive for quick resolutions. This is somewhat of a reluctant compromise with the reality of the situation. Chen Yu observed that amidst the fierce battles, opponents continuously had damaged warships or those that seemed to have exhausted their ammunition, hastily retreating from the battlefield to resupply. In the starry sky, resupplied warships were joining the fray. In contrast, his own forces could only fight to the death without any means of resupply. The allied fleets of Nanxing and Lanyue were also on the move, having deduced his strategic intentions. Chen Yu analyzed the battlefield situation and quickly formed a judgment. It seemed they were eager for him to undertake military adventures. Was it due to the heavy casualties of attrition warfare? They might be willing to temporarily forego their resupply advantage to attempt to inflict heavy damage on him to relieve their pressure. They probably believed that if he launched a military adventure, it could lead to even greater consumption on his part, thereby amplifying their advantage in resupply. This indicated they had sufficient confidence in their defenses. Chen Yu could understand the opponent's reasoning. From their perspective, he might have made a similar judgment. But they were mistaken. His fleet was not an ordinary intelligent civilization's fleet. At this moment, after a long maneuver and the loss of thousands of warships, the human fleet finally completed its assembly. Gathering at a location approximately 9 million kilometers from Planet 1, facing the Wangliang 3A star, they created a space about hundreds of thousands of kilometers wide. All enemy warships within this space had been eliminated, leaving only the human fleet. Conversely, the warships of his own side that had not yet gathered into the main force were surrounded and eliminated by the coalition of two major civilizations. Outside their formation, the enemy was launching a frenzied assault, relentlessly pouring down firepower. Under this intense attack, Chen Yu decisively maneuvered his fleet to advance, closing in on Planet 1. Only a distance of 9 million kilometers remained, which under normal circumstances could be crossed in less than 2 hours of full acceleration. However, facing the enemy's overwhelming assault, every step forward was incredibly challenging. At this moment, most of the enemy's available forces had concentrated on the side of Planet 1. In addition, a vast number of interstellar artillery platforms, military satellites, and other defenses were gathering there. On the planet's surface, some mobile anti-air electromagnetic energy cannon arrays were also converging. In this situation, forcing a forward movement would be tantamount to seeking death. Only through intense combat to clear out the artillery, satellites, automated defensive facilities, and enemy fleets ahead could they create sufficient opportunities to advance a short distance. However, once they advanced a certain distance, new defensive lines would immediately emerge ahead. Chen Yu had no choice but to repeat the previous tactics, finding ways to eliminate the defenses before he could advance again. At this moment, the battlefield area has shrunk, but the intensity of the fighting has increased exponentially. Every second, the warships on the outer edge of the formation are taking losses. In the face of the enemy's overwhelming assault, no level of energy shield can provide any real defense. Furthermore, there are enemy fleets forming a spearhead, attempting to penetrate the formation and disrupt it from within. If they succeed in breaching the interior, the destructive power would be immense. Once coordination is lost, even a single warship, or small groups of dozens or hundreds of ships, would have no chance of survival in such a battlefield and would be annihilated in an instant. At this moment, Chen Yu clearly sees another spearhead slowly taking shape, charging towards his formation with a fearless demeanor. As this spearhead advances, thousands of enemy warships open fire for suppression, attacking fiercely while also working hard to provide cover for the spearhead, intercepting various attacks heading towards it. This is the third fleet of the Deep Gray Fleet of the Blue Moon civilization. Watching the spearhead form, Chen Yu feels a sense of shock. The Deep Gray Fleet is the ace fleet of the Blue Moon civilization. It seems that Hongshan is truly willing to sacrifice this fleet for a suicidal attack. Chapter 181, The Pearl Summit. Chen Yu's evaluation of Hongshan and Lu went rises a notch. During the previous fierce battles between the two civilizations, Hongshan had never allowed the Deep Gray Fleet to undertake such a mission. But now, to protect the first planet controlled by the South Star civilization, Hongshan has deployed this fleet. This clearly indicates that both sides have fully reached a cooperation agreement, completely putting aside past grievances and uniting without holding back. It also signifies that both commanders believe they are the greatest threat to each other. This decisiveness, this judgment, and this boldness make Chen Yu secretly admire them. However, admiration aside, the fight must go on. The total strength of the Deep Gray Fleet is only about 1,000 warships, with its flagship being a vessel that falls between the dwarf planet level and the comet level as Chen Yu classifies them. At this moment, the flagship is stationed in the center, surrounded by nearly 1,000 warships, forming a spearhead formation and accelerating madly towards his formation. A deluge of electromagnetic projectiles serves as the conventional weaponry. Beyond these weapons, tens of thousands of high-energy lasers begin to target any enemy ahead, clearing out any military satellites, interstellar mines, and miniature missiles heading towards them. Without hesitation, Chunyu immediately organizes relevant forces to launch a counteroffensive. To confront this 1,000-ship enemy fleet, Chunyu assembles 7,000 of his own warships and allocates a dwarf planet-level warship. Yet, even with a 1-to-7 troop ratio against this ace fleet, Chunyu has no confidence in victory. Amidst the chaos, Chunyu skillfully maneuvers a small warship forward. However, suddenly in the vastness of deep space, a bomb explodes. Its flash fleeting, and a powerful electromagnetic energy erupts. In an instant, the internal circuits of the small warship are burned out, severing its connection with Chunyu. An electromagnetic bomb. Chunyu immediately retracted the power allocation for the small warship, while maneuvering another small warship to advance forward. Suddenly, without any attacks being launched, the thrusters of the small warship reached an extremely high temperature, erupting into a massive fireball. At the same time, the electromagnetic energy cannon barrels, telescopes, radar detectors, and other external facilities were also destroyed. Although the internal facilities of the warship remained intact, it had lost power, its vision and hearing, and could no longer fight. Graphite bombs. Tiny graphite particles diffused in the cosmos broke through the energy shield's protection, infiltrating the exposed external facilities of the warship, causing short circuits and instantly burning them out. Chunyu immediately detonated the hydrogen bomb inside the small warship, trying to inflict some casualties on the enemy while self-destructing. It also instantly severed its connection with Chunyu. Another small warship was under siege by tens of thousands of interstellar mines. They surged forward like piranhas, disregarding their own survival. Eventually, the energy shield overloaded and burned out, exposing the fragile hull, which was instantly destroyed. It too lost contact with Chunyu. The battle had entered a fever pitch from the very start. Taking advantage of the breach opened by the Deep Gray Fleet, more enemy warships began to flood in recklessly. The Deep Gray Fleet must be eliminated immediately, otherwise, more warships would breach the defenses. Otherwise, the entire fleet would be affected. Chunyu decisively pushed the Everest-class dwarf planet warship forward, meeting force with force, showing no signs of retreat. In the fierce battle, tens of thousands of electromagnetic cannon projectiles struck the dwarf planet warship, creating ripples on the energy shield. However, this was only the initial barrage of projectiles within a second. The battle was too intense, and the number of projectiles that broke through the interception was overwhelming. Want to push back the Everest? Chunyu instantly sensed the enemy's tactical intentions. At this moment, if Chunyu wanted to preserve the Everest, he would have to retreat. But if the Everest retreated, the enemy fleet would advance again, tearing open a larger breach. Chunyu sneered inwardly, maneuvering the Everest to press forward instead, pushing harder against the enemy. The Everest. I can afford to lose. It's just a dwarf planet-class warship. I have plenty. The Deep Gray Fleet momentarily fell into chaos. Clearly, the opponent did not anticipate that Chunyu could so easily abandon even a dwarf planet-class warship. But the confusion lasted only an instant. The next moment, an even more intense assault converged on the Everest. However, due to the massive size and protective strength of the dwarf planet-class warship, a large number of attacks were forcibly blocked in that moment, giving the remaining warships an opportunity. Counterattack. Nearly 10,000 warships surged forward. Against the bright white backdrop of the universe, a fireball erupted, shining countless times brighter than a star. The fireball flickered and vanished, clearing everything within a radius of thousands of kilometers, both tangible and intangible. As the Everest-class warship sustained severe damage, Chunyu detonated the powerful hydrogen bomb inside, leading to its self-destruction. A priceless dwarf planet-class warship self-destructed without warning. This further disrupted the tactical layout of the Deep Gray Fleet. In the end, nearly 1,000 ace warships managed to flee, but only around 400 escaped in a panic, while over 700 others were destroyed. This wave of offensive, at the cost of one dwarf planet-class warship and a total of 8,000 other various warships, finally repelled the enemy, leaving about 1,200 enemy ships behind. Achieving a damage ratio of 1-to-7 against the ace fleet was still acceptable. Chunyu was not dissatisfied with this outcome. The human fleet continued to advance steadily. At this moment, the distance to the first planet had been reduced to 6 million kilometers. At this distance, the enemy's offensive became increasingly fierce, and their interception efforts were resolute. The situation became so intense that Chunyu had to temporarily retreat, increasing the distance back to 7 million kilometers. Damn it! Chunyu looked at the distant small yellow planet and the energy shields on it, which resembled tiny dots, feeling a bitter resentment. A significant portion of the enemy's offensive came from ground-based air defense electromagnetic energy cannons on that planet. If only he could eliminate those ground defense forces, the pressure Chinyu faced would be much less. If he could just drop a few high-yield hydrogen bombs over there, that would be great, he thought. Energy shields could defend against electromagnetic projectiles, interstellar mines, miniature missiles, and other weapons, but they were completely helpless against hydrogen bombs. It could be said that as long as a few hydrogen bombs with a yield above 1 billion tons of standard explosives were thrown over, the entire crust of that planet would be affected, triggering global seismic and volcanic eruptions that would destroy all defensive forces and factories on it. Chapter 182. Strategic Miscalculation. Unfortunately, Chinyu could only think about it this way, as such tactics were entirely impractical. Hydrogen bombs have many incomparable advantages, but they have one significant drawback. Their mass and volume are too large, making rapid deployment impossible. Deployment is the most critical performance indicator in interstellar warfare. No matter how powerful they are, if they can't be deployed, what use are they? The fastest large interstellar missiles are still slow compared to electromagnetic projectiles, and any electromagnetic projectile could easily destroy them before the hydrogen bomb could even be detonated, rendering them useless. Faced with that planet merely a few million kilometers away, Chinyu could only sigh in frustration, ultimately adhering to the previous tactics and continuing to advance steadily. This time, Chinyu was determined. He began to disregard the consumption of warships and the casualties inflicted by the enemy, focusing solely on advancing. Under this strategy, the rate of ship annihilation immediately surged to an unbearable level for any commander. Yet, Chinyu remained unfazed and continued to push forward. This change did not go unnoticed by Hong Shan and Lu Went. Such reckless advancement undeniably placed immense pressure on them and resulted in unimaginable casualties. What I don't understand is that, based on this rate of damage, even if the enemy fleet ultimately breaks through our defenses and occupies Planet 1, their total number of warships will be reduced to less than 50,000, and they will have no supplies. By that time, our coalition's total number of warships will also be reduced to around 7,000. However, in the rest of the galaxy, we still have about 10,000 warships that have not yet been engaged in battle and have ample supplies. With 170,000 well-supplied warships on our side against the enemy's approximately 480,000 poorly supplied warships, it is clear which side has the advantage. Red Mountain does not believe that the enemy fleet commander could have overlooked this situation. Yet, it is evident that they still chose to proceed this way, which only adds to his confusion. Loent is also mired in doubt, as he has come to the same conclusion. Perhaps the enemy plans to secure supplies from Planet 1 after occupying it? As he thinks this, he shakes his head to dismiss the idea. It's impossible. Faced with our all-out offensive, lacking supplies, and with many warships unable to muster their full combat power due to a lack of repairs, they cannot possibly build enough factories on Planet 1. Even if they exceeded our expectations and managed to construct sufficient supply factories to acquire ample resources, what good would it do? In comparison, our strength would still prevail. Could they have hidden forces in space? That too seems impossible. If they had hidden forces, why not reveal them from the start? That would put us at a greater disadvantage, and they wouldn't have to pay such a high price. The enemy's unexpected actions have left both top military strategists in confusion. Intense battles continue, with significant casualties on both sides every moment. Both commanders feel the weight of these losses. After all, before the war began, each side possessed about half of the civilization's military strength, roughly 50,000 warships. However, after this war, retaining 8,000 or 9,000 warships would be considered a good outcome. The overall military strength of the civilization has suffered substantial losses in this galaxy, which cannot be understated. Nevertheless, both excellent commanders manage to keep their emotions in check. When losses are unavoidable, minimizing them can still be seen as fulfilling their responsibility. A commander should not be swayed by negative emotions. The two commanders continue to dutifully direct the battle, but subconsciously, they are always pondering the same question. What does the enemy truly want? After a few days, they resume their regular communication. I have thought for 3 days and nights, and still can't understand why the enemy is acting this way. Me too. I have considered every aspect and angle of the situation, but still can't figure it out. Is the enemy commander out of their mind? At this moment, Loent finally loses his composure and exclaims, "It seems like they've lost their senses. Let us assume they have indeed lost their minds. The enemy's strategic blunder gives us no reason not to take advantage of it. Let us proceed accordingly." Both individuals were clearly aware that once the enemy adopted such a reckless and unyielding strategy, it would be impossible for their side to continue holding onto Planet 1. The fall of Planet 1 to the enemy was inevitable. However, even if they occupied Planet 1, they had to be able to hold it. Even if they could hold it, they needed to provide sufficient defense and establish enough factories. Otherwise, what was the point of occupying a planet? An excellent commander should not be concerned with immediate gains or losses. For the sake of greater strategic interests, certain concessions could be made in the short term, even at a cost. Once both sides reached an agreement, subsequent tactics were immediately adjusted. Since they had already prepared for the loss of Planet One, they should not continue to stubbornly defend it, but rather start preparing for the loss by conducting personnel withdrawals, disposing of equipment and facilities, and setting traps to create trouble for the enemy. Of course, even if they were prepared for the loss of Planet One, it did not mean they would simply let the enemy take over without a fight. While I am indeed not planning to hold on stubbornly, if you want to take it, you must pay the price. From this moment on, our strategic goal has changed to inflicting as much damage on the enemy as possible while preserving our own forces. The more damage inflicted on the enemy at this stage, the greater our initiative will be later on. Under these circumstances, Qin Yu noticed that his opponent's tactics had become more flexible. Sometimes, in order to inflict more damage on themselves, they would even take the initiative to retreat, allowing themselves to advance. Qin Yu immediately grasped the strategic intentions of his opponents. They were aware that Planet One was about to fall and were preparing for the future. He secretly chuckled to himself. When the time comes, I'll give you a surprise. In this situation, it had been nearly 20 days since Qin Yu changed tactics, and the human fleet had finally advanced to a point just 200,000 kilometers away from Planet One. At this moment, in front of the human fleet, apart from the ground-based air defense weapons that were still fiercely attacking them, there were no enemy warships left in sight. This distance, which would normally take less than 2 hours to cover, was finally crossed by Qin Yu. Chapter 183. Industrial Frenzy. Looking at the surface of Planet One, with its patches resembling yellow spots representing energy shields, and feeling the violent electromagnetic energy projectiles being launched from beneath those shields, Qin Yu was filled with emotion. After paying such a tremendous price, they had finally achieved their current strategic objective. At this moment, apart from those warships that were still under his control but had suffered severe damage and a significant decrease in combat capability, there were approximately 460,000 warships capable of operating above the baseline combat level. Among them, only 7 Dwarf Planet-class warships remained, including the Zhu Feng warship, along with the Alps and Atlantic warships. A total of 8 Dwarf Planet-class warships had been destroyed. This loss was considerable and had exceeded Qin Yu's original estimates to a significant extent. Originally, Commander Qin Yu believed that by deploying 150,000 warships, he could conquer Planet One at the cost of no more than 90,000 ships, leaving him with a reserve of 60,000 combat vessels. However, the reality was that he only had 460,000 warships available. Although he had repeatedly overestimated the combat capabilities of the Allied forces, he ultimately realized he had underestimated them. This was especially true for the elite fleets within the coalition, such as the Deep Gray Fleet of the Blue Moon Civilization and the Rift Sky Wolf Fleet of the South Star Civilization, which inflicted significant damage on his forces, leading to higher costs to repel or eliminate them. Moreover, in his determination to break through the defenses and capture Planet One, he had been somewhat reckless, resulting in the current situation. Nevertheless, the situation remained under control, as Qin Yu had initially accounted for sufficient redundancy in his plans. Even with only 460,000 warships left, it was still entirely adequate. At this moment, in the video conference, Hongshan and Lu Went both displayed complex expressions. They felt a mix of sorrow and exhilaration. The sorrow stemmed from the significant losses sustained in this battle, with so many elite warships and warriors perishing in this star system, all due to the sudden emergence of this unexpected enemy, which had not been part of the original plan. The exhilaration, on the other hand, was due to the fact that the enemy's available warships after breaking through the defenses were now only 460,000 less than initially anticipated. Furthermore, it was originally estimated that their forces would have around 70,000 warships remaining in the battlefield area of Planet One, along with others not yet engaged, totaling about 170,000. However, the actual count was 1,000 more than expected, reaching 180,000, and around 500 warships that had undergone emergency repairs were expected to return to the battlefield. The original plan was for 170,000 against the enemy's 480,000. Now, it was 180,000 against 460,000. With this shift in numbers, the advantage once again tilted in their favor, boosting both commanders' confidence in victory. It was time to execute the second phase of the strategy. Agreed. With their consensus, the Allied fleet began to mobilize once more. From this moment on, the tide of attack and defense had completely reversed. Previously, the enemy had been attacking their defenses. But after conceding control of Planet One, it became their turn to assault the enemy's defenses. A large number of previously uninvolved warships were now being rallied towards Planet One. The defense in other areas might be weakened, But it didn't matter, as the enemy lacked the mobility to launch an attack elsewhere. Even if they did, there was almost no possibility of a surprise attack in the core area of the star system. Once the enemy fleet moved, it would be immediately detected by their forces, and they could then mobilize their fleets to intercept. The coalition fleet on the outer side, apart from about 2,000 warships serving as reserves, launched a fierce assault with 160,000 warships directed at Chun Yu's fleet. At the same time, the ground-based air defense forces on the first planet were also unleashing a barrage of fire. At this moment, Chun Yu could easily drop several high-yield hydrogen bombs to eliminate all the ground-based air defense forces on the first planet. However, he chose not to do so. It would be foolish to damage the planet now that it was his. How could he develop it later? Not only could he not use nuclear weapons, but he also had to do his best to intercept any nuclear bombs that the enemy might launch. As for taking over those ground-based air defense forces, he didn't even consider it. Furthermore, he planned to destroy all the engineering capabilities left behind by the enemy, such as fusion power plants, mines, and foundries, and was too lazy to bother with taking them over. The reason was simple. How could the enemy be so kind as to leave those things for him? He was almost certain that the original resource reserves had already been emptied, and any factories that appeared intact on the surface had likely been sabotaged internally and rigged with numerous traps. Attempting to take control would only waste time and resources. However, the coalition did not resort to nuclear weapons to shatter the planet's crust. It seemed they still had plans to retake the planet. For a level 3 civilization, destroying a large planet's ecosystem and fracturing its crust to induce global seismic and volcanic activity was relatively straightforward. In such a scenario, even a level 3 civilization would struggle to obtain resources and supplies from it. With tremors everywhere and lava rampaging, it would be impossible to build factories. In that case, Shinyu would also be helpless, left only to watch. But the coalition did not do this. Instead, they left a relatively intact planet for Chunyu. They likely did not believe he could build factories under their relentless assault, and were also planning for their future reoccupation of the planet. They did not think they could hold the planet. Reflecting on this, Chunyu mobilized part of his offensive forces, sweeping through like autumn winds scattering leaves, and soon cleared away hundreds of thousands of factories and ground-based air defense electromagnetic artillery arrays. Whatever traps and schemes were inside were blown away with the wind. Seeing this scene, both Hongshan and Lu Went felt a bit disappointed. After all, the traps they had laid required considerable effort, and they never expected the opponent would simply destroy them all without even taking a look. Well, this planet truly belongs to me now. Next, let me show you what a real industrial powerhouse looks like. Chapter 184, Magic. Chunyu was well aware that holding a planet was not easy, especially when his side was at a significant disadvantage. Moreover, holding a planet and obtaining supplies from it were two different matters. The former merely ensured that the planet was not occupied by the enemy. The latter requires not only to protect this planet, but also to intercept most of the enemy's incoming assaults, and then to build mines and factories on this planet. Undoubtedly, the difficulty of the latter is several times greater than the former. However, at this moment, Chunyu must achieve the latter. Otherwise, occupying this planet would be meaningless to him. The remaining tens of thousands of warships would also be left behind, and the overall grand strategy of human civilization would be completely disrupted. At this moment, tens of thousands of our warships were engaged in fierce combat, with over 10,000 enemy warships in the three-dimensional space between 100,000 to 3 million kilometers away from the planet. At this stage, Chunyu no longer pursued inflicting damage on the enemy. Instead, he began to focus on intercepting the enemy's artillery fire to provide sufficient protection for the planet. In this situation, a large number of transport ships began to be released from the warships. Under the cover of the warships, they carried a significant amount of machinery and robots and started to descend towards the planet. Upon noticing this, the enemy's artillery fire went into a frenzy again. They must stop the enemy from building industrial facilities on this planet. Otherwise, this planet would truly be lost. The battle once again reached a fever pitch. As soon as a large number of transport ships left the warships, they were destroyed by enemy fire. However, their numbers were simply overwhelming. And under the desperate cover of the human fleet, many transport ships still managed to land on the planet's surface. As the hatches opened, a massive number of robots surged out like a tide of steel, with the protection of the energy shields on the transport ships. These robots moved swiftly and efficiently to retrieve and quickly assemble another set of energy shield generators, once connected to specialized modular small-scale nuclear fusion power plant devices. A larger energy shield was immediately erected, protecting an area approximately the size of a football field. Such events occurred simultaneously across every location on the planet. In a very short time, over 30,000 energy shields were raised. Every moment, numerous energy shields were breached by attacks from space, and robots were instantly destroyed. But at the same time, new transport ships from space were continuously bringing in fresh energy shield generators and robots to raise new energy shields again. On one side was destruction, and on the other side was rebirth. Moreover, the speed of rebirth far exceeded that of destruction, withstanding the relentless artillery fire. In just 2 days, the number of energy shields had surged to 50,000 and was still rapidly increasing. Not only that, but the locations of these energy shields also seemed to be deliberately chosen. Through remote detection, Hong Shan and Lu Went were somewhat surprised to discover that the enemy appeared to have already planned their industrial system. Some energy shields occupy mineral extraction points, allowing for the collection of iron ore, copper ore, tin ore, phosphate ore, and more. Others are located near mining sites, seemingly constructed as primary processing facilities for nearby minerals. Larger energy shields are built in plain areas, ensuring convenient transportation with surrounding energy shields. Are they really so confident in building an industrial system? Isn't that too arrogant and presumptuous? The two individuals were filled with doubt. As they closely observed, something even more astonishing occurred. Under one of the energy shields located at a copper mine, they were shocked to see that just 1 day prior, the area was completely barren, devoid of anything except the energy shield. However, by the next day, a large number of machines had already been erected. On the third day, black smoke began to rise, indicating that mineral extraction had already started. It had taken only 2 days to set up an entire mineral collection system. How could this be possible? Although using modular equipment to speed up machine assembly is a common tactic on the battlefield, even with modular devices, it shouldn't be this fast. Lu went through the details in his mind. His own fleet was well trained, and even the most elite resource military corps would require at least 10 days to set up and operationalize a mineral collection system under the complete defense provided by energy shields. How could the enemy possibly start mining in just 2 days? Under the orders of the two commanders, the fleet's intelligence detection system increased its observation of the planet's surface. Soon after, a shocking scene unfolded before them. Robots. A vast number of robots. Countless robots. They swarmed like ants, moving rapidly across the construction site. They were incredibly strong, with one able to lift thousands of pounds, and some even capable of flying. They worked in perfect harmony, although the massive construction site appeared chaotic at first glance. Upon closer inspection, there was not a single mistake to be found. There were no collision incidents, no delays in progress, no one slacking off, and no one feeling fear. All the robots operated like the gears of a precision machine, moving quickly and accurately. One robot charged out of the warehouse at a speed of several hundred kilometers per hour, crashing through the surroundings, and astonishingly, none of the tens of thousands of robots it passed blocked its path, nor did they slow down. When this robot reached its destination, it carelessly tossed a metal box in its hand, even though there was clearly no one in front of it, just as the box was about to hit the ground. Another robot, also traveling at several hundred kilometers per hour, happened to cross through the rushing crowd from another direction, catching the metal box perfectly and continuing on without stopping toward the next location. Dozens of robots sprinted toward a large, semi-finished machine. The first robot directly laid down a gasket, and just 0.1 seconds later, another robot arrived to place a bearing on top. After another 0.1 seconds, yet another robot installed a crankshaft. In just a few seconds, as if by magic, a large machine was fully assembled. The next moment, without any human operation needed, it began to roar to life on its own. The massive special alloy excavator dug down fiercely, picking up several dozen tons of ore in one scoop, quickly turning and dumping it aside, just as a giant truck happened to be parked underneath the excavator, catching all the ore. Chapter 185, Destruction and Rebirth. This was just one mining site. At this very moment, similar sites had sprung up on the surface of Planet 1 like mushrooms after the rain, totaling in the tens of thousands. Each construction site had at least 10,000 robots, with a total of hundreds of millions of robots working frantically, flawlessly, and tirelessly. Such a scene, showcasing the beauty of industry to the fullest, left both commanders, Hong Shan and Lu Went, in shock. How could this be possible? They had initially thought that the enemy was merely skilled in operating unmanned spacecraft. When it came to industrial capabilities, surely they would return to a normal state. Who could have imagined that the enemy had such a trick up their sleeve? We're talking about hundreds of millions of robots. How could so many robots work together so seamlessly? It couldn't be remote operation by humans. Humans couldn't achieve this. Nor could it be purely computer control, as that wouldn't allow for such flexibility. Yes, flexibility. The two commanders even witnessed a group of robots collaborating to resolve a sudden, unexpected incident. It was a piece of mining equipment that had been damaged by their own side's attack. That group of robots creatively disassembled a few of their own, made slight modifications, and reassembled them, restoring the damaged equipment to operational capability. Such creative work, how could a simple computer program accomplish that? But it couldn't be humans operating it. Or could it be purely computer control? How was this even possible? At this moment, the two commanders felt that their worldviews had been almost completely overturned, as if the world around them was somewhat illusory. However, since they couldn't come to a conclusion, they decided to think about it later. They quickly realized that if they allowed the enemy to continue at this pace, there was a real possibility that the enemy could establish an industrial system on the first planet under the relentless bombardment of their forces, thus obtaining supplies. Although the enemy currently possessed over 40,000 outdated warships, which wouldn't be a match even if they were resupplied, why not make things a bit easier? Why not reduce casualties if possible? Moreover, who could guarantee that the enemy wouldn't create other problems down the line? They decided to shift the focus of their attack towards the enemy's industrial facilities to stop them, to hinder them. The two commanders made a decisive adjustment to their tactical objectives. Was the enemy's confidence in establishing an industrial system under their attack the reason they had previously made the seemingly absurd choice to fully commit and break through their defenses to occupy the first planet? A sense of foreboding arose in both of their minds. At this moment, under the frantic efforts of billions of robotic machines working like ants, Chun Yu had already built thousands of mines on the first planet and started producing primary metal materials. Not only that, but metal processing plants, foundries, and chemical raw material factories were also beginning to be constructed, with energy shields protecting them. The orbital transport systems, high-throughput heavy-duty trucks equipped with energy shields, and near-space spacecraft were all fully deployed, transporting primary industrial raw materials to deep processing factories. Faced with the rapid progress of ground construction, the coalition fleet finally reacted and decisively adjusted their tactical goals, shifting their main attack direction towards Chun Yu's industrial facilities. This change immediately caught Chun Yu's attention and added some pressure. However, this was to be expected. He had anticipated it all along. After all, the enemy was not foolish. At this stage, Chun Yu had no good options left. The only thing he could do was to push back with all his might, intercept the enemy's firepower as much as possible, and provide as much protection for the ground as he could. Meanwhile, he aimed to quickly construct air defense positions and enhance the power of the energy shields. The evolution of the battlefield quickly reflected on the surface of the planet. A newly constructed primary metal processing plant, despite Chun Yu's efforts to enhance the energy shield's power and build an anti-aircraft position nearby, could not withstand the relentless barrage of artillery fire. The energy shield finally failed, resulting in an explosion that turned the massive factory into a heap of ruins. Similarly, a hydrogen plant that Chun Yu had painstakingly built and which had only recently started production, generating a few hundred tons of hydrogen, was also shattered by the intense bombardment. The energy shield was breached, and after the explosion, hundreds of tons of precious fusion materials escaped into the atmosphere. Planet 1 is a rocky planet with a certain thickness of atmosphere, but the hydrogen content in the atmosphere is extremely low, and there is no liquid water on the surface. However, this planet is not short of water. A large amount of water is combined with other minerals to form hydrates. Chun Yu must build specialized factories to extract this water, then use electrolysis to produce hydrogen, leveraging the energy from hydrogen fusion to support his industrial development. In another location, a fusion power station that Chun Yu valued highly, responsible for supplying energy to dozens of large factories in the vicinity, also faced a disastrous fate. In an instant, the energy shield was breached and all facilities were destroyed. The over 1,000 tons of precious hydrogen that had just been delivered also dispersed into the atmosphere. The losses were severe. It can be said that at every moment, large and small ground factories were being destroyed. The destruction of each factory also meant the loss of hundreds to tens of thousands of working robots. Even with over 40,000 warships making every effort to intercept enemy fire, and even resorting to self-sacrificial maneuvers to block the attacks when necessary, Chun Yu could not prevent the destruction of these invaluable factories. However, Chun Yu did not actually care. You destroy one mine, I will build 10. You destroy one power station, I will create 10 new ones. You take out one robot, I will bring in 100, 1,000. Let's see if you can destroy faster than I can build. You have a club, I have a hard head. Go ahead, destroy as much as you want. Far away in the vastness of deep space, billions of kilometers away, the supercomputer aboard the human ship was operating frantically, with immense computational power continuously sent to this rocky planet through advanced communication technology. Amidst this intense battle, amidst the continuous cycle of destruction and rebirth, the bright yellow energy shield became increasingly visible across Planet 1. Chapter 186. The advantage is mine at this moment. The two commanders, Hong Shan and Lu Went, felt a hint of despair. Indeed, our offensive had completely suppressed the enemy. With just over 10,000 warships attacking, the enemy's more than 40,000 ships were unable to defend themselves and could only passively endure the assault, lacking any means to retaliate. Indeed, Our offensive had caused tremendous damage to the enemy's industrial development process. According to incomplete statistics, since the enemy began their industrial construction, they have faced desperate defenses. Yet our attacks have still destroyed over 26,000 factories, power plants, and mines of all sizes. When considering this in relation to our own civilization or the Blue Moon civilization, such a level of destruction would have been enough to annihilate an industrial construction force, or at least bring it to the brink of collapse. So why, despite this, does the enemy continue to build more factories? We have destroyed over 260,000 factories. Yet the enemy has managed to construct nearly 60,000 new ones. And they are still building. How insane is that? The two commanders felt as if they were going mad. What kind of enemy is this? Fortunately, there is one crucial factor that has kept them from losing their sanity completely. Even if the enemy has built a complete industrial facility and obtained enough supplies from their home planet, their remaining 40,000 outdated warships are still no match for our forces. The sheer magnitude of the enemy's industrial power has indeed exceeded our expectations. However, if we consider our current comprehensive war potential to be 100, then the enemy has only managed to raise theirs from 40 to 80. We still hold the advantage. The advantage is ours. 100 to 80. How can we lose? We cannot lose. The situation is still under control. The two commanders desperately reassured themselves while issuing orders to intensify the attacks on the enemy's industrial facilities once again. Even though they knew they could not stop the enemy's industrial construction, they at least aimed to slow it down, to make sure the enemy could not complete it easily. Amidst Chun Yu's frantic construction and fierce protection, a massive industrial system was slowly taking shape on the home planet, now reaching its final stages. At this moment, a large number of deep processing factories had completed their setup and had begun producing goods. The final step required now was to build the end factories, such as assembly plants and component factories. One end factory, which was under the strictest protection from Chun Yu while also facing the fiercest enemy attacks, had been completed and was about to produce finished products. Lu Went and Hong Shan were closely monitoring this factory as well. Knowing what kind of products this factory would ultimately produce would reveal what materials the enemy currently lacked the most. For example, if the factory produced components related to nuclear fusion power stations, we would understand that the enemy's warships were experiencing widespread damage to their energy supply centers, allowing us to formulate targeted tactics. If it produced energy shield components, we could also adjust our strategies accordingly. After all, it took considerable effort to finally produce finished goods. And they should be items that are urgently needed by us at this stage. This should be foolproof, right? At this moment, components from various deep processing factories had been gathered in this factory. With Chun Yu's computational power infused into it, this factory, which Chun Yu had high hopes for, finally began its operations, and the assembly line roared to life. The first batch of products was finally off the line. When the first batch of products was observed through remote monitoring, both commanders, Lu Went and Hong Shan, were taken aback. What was going on? This first batch did not consist of components related to energy shields, nuclear fusion power plants, detectors, military satellites, or interstellar artillery. Instead, it was robots. How could all this effort result in a robotic factory? And the production volume was astonishing. Initial estimates suggested an average output of 20 units per second. That meant 720,000 units per hour and 17.28 million units per day. This output was indeed impressive, but why produce so many robots when essential supplies were not being manufactured? The two were puzzled and felt a hint of concern. They were genuinely intimidated by the endless surprises posed by this inexplicable opponent. What new scheme could the enemy be devising this time? Under their close watch, the vast number of robots continuously produced began to be packaged and sent to various locations on the planet. Additionally, the second, third, and fourth final assembly factories had also begun operations, all of which were robotic factories. As of now, the enemy's robot production capacity had astonishingly reached 10 million units per day, and it appeared that this was just the beginning, as similar factories were still being constructed. What they did not know was that Chun Yu was also compelled to take this route. There was simply no other choice. His warships had to reserve enough space and weight capacity for essential supplies such as ammunition, missiles, satellites, and fusion fuel, while also transporting basic industrial facilities. The number of robots loaded onto these ships was actually quite limited. With the significant consumption of robots in the earlier stages, Chun Yu found that the number of robots he could deploy was dwindling. If he did not replenish them quickly, he might soon run out of usable units. Fortunately, at this moment, 40 robotic factories, large and small, had been completed, with a production rate reaching about 20 million units per day, barely keeping up with demand and preventing a manpower shortage. On the assembly line, a large number of components from around the world were rapidly converging into the robotic factories, enabling a steady stream of robots to be produced. Each time a robot was completed and passed self-checks, it would immediately establish direct contact with Qin Yu, who would then direct it to various locations worldwide to begin its tasks. After the most urgent robotic factory was established, some supply factories were finally completed, starting to produce traditional supplies such as military satellites and interstellar mines, which were then transported to space via ferry ships and deployed to the battlefield. The enemy had successfully established an industrial system on Planet 1 and secured supplies, which was not good news. However, Lu Went and Hongshan both breathed a sigh of relief. Although this situation was astonishing, it was still something their side could understand. Unlike before when they were completely in the dark about the enemy's actions. But in the next moment, an even more unexpected development occurred. Chapter 187. The darkness before dawn. The two were astonished to see that, after completing their current industrial base, the enemy had not stopped. They were still constructing. They were building mines, power plants, and factories. This was somewhat exaggerated. After all, with only around 40,000 warships, were there not enough factories to provide logistical support? The total number of these factories was nearing 100,000. Even if the warships increased, the support from these factories would have been more than sufficient. Wasn't building so many factories a waste? Both of their hearts sank. What kind of trouble was the enemy brewing this time? But it surely wouldn't be good. This couldn't go on any longer. No matter what the enemy intended to do, they had to be stopped. It was imperative to prevent them. They both made up their minds simultaneously. A new command was transmitted to every warship in their fleet. Full assault. Full assault. No more concerns about resource consumption. No regard for casualties. Attack. Attack. Reserve troops, move out. All defensive fleets from other planets, come over, come over. At this moment, the two commanders were willing to do anything, even recalling all the warships stationed on other planets. In the Wangliang 3-star system, after several rounds of withdrawals, aside from the battlefield on Planet 1, there were not many defensive warships left on the other planets. Only about 1,000 in total, scattered across more than 100 target planets. On average, there were even less than 10 defensive warships per planet. This defense was incredibly weak. Now, once they pulled away this last line of defense, they would only have the automated defense systems left, such as military satellites, interstellar artillery, and mines, along with the land-based air defenses on the planets for protection. Numerous real-world battles had proven that, when faced with agile warships, these defenses could offer very limited protection. This was essentially equivalent to exposing their vulnerabilities completely to the enemy. But even so, the two commanders could not afford to hesitate. No matter what, they had to stop the enemy's construction efforts. Who knew what kind of chaos would ensue once the enemy truly completed their constructions? Faced with the enemy's final frenzy, Qin Yu also began to feel the strain, even experiencing an unusual moment when the number of destroyed factories exceeded that of newly constructed ones. The assault from space was relentless. Countless electromagnetic energy projectiles, clusters of interstellar mines, micromissiles, electromagnetic bombs, graphite bombs, and so on poured down on Planet 1 like a torrential storm. No matter how strong the defenses were, they could not hold. But Qin Yu also understood in his heart that this was the last darkness before dawn. He had to endure, otherwise, all efforts would be in vain. At this moment, Qin Yu completely let go. Realizing that mere defense would not hold, he even began to take the initiative to attack, hoping to suppress the enemy and reduce their firepower through offense. The best defense is a good offense, and at this moment, Qin Yu planned to truly put this into practice. At the beginning of the implementation, Qin Yu truly felt that the effect was indeed significant. Under the strong offensive without considering casualties on their side, the enemy's firepower had indeed weakened considerably. However, the casualties were also substantial. At this stage, the damage ratio between Qin Yu and his opponent reached as high as 8-1, meaning that 8 of their own warships had to be destroyed to take down one enemy warship of the same level. Under normal circumstances, it should have been 5-1. Now, to suppress the enemy's firepower, Qin Yu had to pay a greater price. But this did yield some results and bought Qin Yu a bit of time. On Planet 1, after a month of intense offense and defense, Qin Yu had produced a total of 600 million robots. Among them, 420 million had been destroyed by the enemy's attacks, leaving 18 million robots working tirelessly. These 18 million robots, which did not rest, made no mistakes, and combined the accuracy of computers with the creativity of intelligent beings. Qin Yu felt that they could easily match 10 human workers each. Amidst the frantic work of these robots, power plants, mines, chemical factories, foundries, precision machinery plants, chip factories, and more were constructed under heavy bombardment. When the most important terminal factory was finally completed, Qin Yu breathed a huge sigh of relief. He knew he had truly secured victory in this war. Indeed, at this moment, Qin Yu could confirm that he had really won this battle. In the past, although he had absolute confidence, it was merely confidence and not reality. Now, victory had become a reality. On the human battleship, when Qin Yu announced the completion of the first factory, the military advisors of intelligent beings cheered together. We won. We won. At this moment, what Xinyu did not know was that in the Coalition Command Center, during a video call, Lu Went and Hong Shan were also somewhat excited and thrilled. At this stage, our available warships numbered around 160,000, while the enemy had only about 30,000 left, with the ratio of forces dropping below 2 to 1. 2 to 1 is a critical threshold. Initially, the enemy fleet came in full force with a total of 150,000 warships, while we had only over 30,000, a ratio of about 5 to 1. Now it was even less than 2 to 1. Once the ratio broke below 2 to 1, many of the enemy's tactics would become unusable, and we could more easily harvest their forces. Soon, the enemy's tactical system would collapse, leading to a complete defeat. No matter what tricks they tried to play afterward, they would have no chance. Victory already belonged to us, even if they had so many satellites, numerous ground-based air defense systems, and interstellar artillery and missiles. It would all be useless. At this moment, the two marshals had shed their worries, leaving only exhilaration. It had truly been tough. Our warships had been destroyed by over 20,000, and we had even lost Planet 1. After all this fighting, we had finally locked in victory. But something seemed off. Wait, what was that? The two great marshals, who were just moments ago filled with excitement, suddenly found themselves stunned by the latest intelligence report. It revealed a large factory that had just been completed by the enemy. This was, of course, a key target for their side, but due to the enemy's desperate defenses, it had not yet been destroyed. Now, that large factory had produced its first finished product. It was a spaceship, a warship with a total mass of about 3,000 tons and a maximum length of approximately 36 meters. A warship birthed in a battlefield environment. Chapter 188. Too late. A warship of this tonnage and size, whether on the enemy's side or their own, was considered one of the smallest types of warships. In large-scale interstellar battlefields, such warships were the most numerous and consumed the most resources. In a sense, they could even be regarded as expendable. Yet, at this moment, this smallest of warships left the two seasoned commanders, who had witnessed countless storms and grand scenes, feeling somewhat dizzy and disoriented. How could this be? Both men widened their eyes in disbelief, their muscles twitching involuntarily. Those who have never commanded a large-scale interstellar war could never comprehend how terrifying it was to produce a warship in a battlefield environment. This exceeded their wildest imaginations. In their minds, such a thing was almost equivalent to magic, something that could never occur in the real world. They never even considered this possibility. The reason was simple. Despite being the smallest warship, with a tonnage of only around 3,000 tons, the technology and industrial sectors involved encompassed nearly all technological branches under a Level 3 civilization. Why do Level 3 civilizations habitually use warship performance as a measure of a civilization's overall strength? Because warships draw upon almost all fields of technology. From basic physical theories to materials science, electromagnetism, communications, defense, propulsion, energy, and so forth, all are included and covered. All these disciplines manifest in the final performance of the warship. This is concrete and cannot be faked. Moreover, since warship manufacturing involves all scientific classifications, it inevitably requires a sufficiently comprehensive industrial base. A sufficiently comprehensive industrial base, in turn, necessitates a sufficiently large population. Without enough people, such an industrial base cannot be supported. Without such an industrial base, it would be impossible to build even a small warship. Thus, warship manufacturing must be carried out within the civilization's homeland, a truth universally accepted. This is why warships on the battlefield must be dispatched from the civilization's homeland. And when fleets suffer losses, they must be replenished from there. The idea of producing warships directly in a battlefield environment? There was simply no possibility of that. The two commanders would never even consider it, unless they could somehow move the civilization's main base to the battlefield, transforming the battlefield into the homeland of the civilization. But now, this iron rule has been broken by this inexplicable opponent in front of us. To ordinary soldiers, what they see is merely the emergence of a small warship with outdated performance, completely irrelevant to the bigger picture. However, to the two great commanders, this small warship, despite its inferior capabilities, seems like a demon crawling out of hell, carrying destructive power, especially since it was completed under our almost all-out assault. How could this be possible? Initially, it was already astonishing that the enemy could establish a logistics system under our relentless bombardment, which was already hard to believe. But now, they have directly built a warship. Once the industrial system is established, the production line will unleash unimaginable power. If they can build one, they can build 10, 100, or even thousands. How can we continue this battle? The more we fight, the more warships the enemy will have. After the initial shock and fear, Lu Went looked at Hong Shan and saw a hint of despair in his eyes. There was really no way to fight anymore. What should we do? The usually strategic and resolute Hongshan now looked like a little girl in a storm, filled with fear and confusion as he asked Lu Went this question. Lu Went murmured, "Take advantage of the enemy's industrial strength not having fully erupted yet, and strike decisively to wipe them out completely. It's useless. We have already exerted all our strength before and couldn't stop the enemy's industrial development. Now, with their new warship, it's even more impossible." Lu Went murmured, "What kind of monster is this? How can their industrial strength be so strong?" He had realized that everything the enemy did was premeditated. From the beginning, the cost was not a factor in their war of attrition, to the siege warfare, to occupying Planet 1, everything was planned. It was ridiculous that we thought temporarily ceding Planet 1 to them was inconsequential, only to find that they directly built warships. Hongshan said in despair, "What if we flee?" Lu Wen also said in despair, "There's no escaping. The enemy's warships are unmanned and their mobility is far superior to ours. We simply can't get away. Fighting leads to defeat, and fleeing is impossible. At this moment, with our communication links destroyed by the enemy, we can't even call for help from our homeland. I think I understand why the enemy first cut off our communication links before launching their attack." Hongshan smiled bitterly. The enemy's mode of existence must be peculiar. They are certainly not an ordinary social intelligence civilization. They must not want to expose their oddities, which is why they cut off the communication links, fearing that our uniqueness would attract the attention of the Alliance. The Alliance. Lu Wen also smiled bitterly, but did not say much. This involves some secrets and anomalies, and he believed that Hongshan's Blue Moon civilization must have noticed it too, but both civilizations are currently in a hostile state, making such confidential information difficult to exchange. His thoughts returned to the current battlefield situation. He realized that this was an exceptionally large, yet intricately precise plan. From the moment the adversary brazenly severed our communication links, everything was already destined. It is laughable that we remained oblivious to this, ultimately becoming ensnared like insects caught in a spider's web, slowly but surely reaching this point. Unfortunately, by the time we realized everything, it was already too late. The situation had become irreversible. At this moment, fierce battles are still ongoing around the first planet. With the first warship produced from the first factory, soon after, the second and third ships also emerged. As soon as these warships were born, they were immediately taken over by Chen Yu, who piloted them directly into space to join the ongoing battles. Due to the constraints of the battlefield environment, Chen Yu could only construct warship factories on the planet's surface, unable to build in space. This meant he could only manufacture the smallest Stardust-class warships, while others, Nebula-class, Comet-class, and Dwarf Planet-class, could not be produced because they were too large. Constructing them on the planet's surface would be affected by the planet's gravity. They could only be made in the weightlessness of space. However, even with the limitation of only being able to produce Stardust-class warships at this moment, it was still sufficient. When quality is lacking, quantity can make up for it. If 10 of my Stardust-class warships cannot compete with one of your Nebula-class warships, what about 100? Even ants can take down an elephant in numbers. Supported by a massive industrial system, the daily production capacity of the first spaceship factory quickly reached its peak at 50 ships per day. While 50 Stardust-class warships per day may seem small and barely make a splash on the current battlefield, what about in a month? That amounts to 500 ships. Moreover, Chen Yu's planned spaceship manufacturing facilities are not just one, but a total of 20, from the first factory to the 20th. The theoretical peak capacity is 1,000 ships per day. Of course, in the chaotic reality of the battlefield, conditions are too tumultuous and the fighting too intense, with frequent unexpected events. So the actual production capacity may not reach that high. However, an average of 700 ships per day can still be guaranteed. As time goes on, and as more spaceship factories begin operations, the advantage in the situation grows ever larger for Chen Yu. This is why Chen Yu and the members of the Intelligent Life Advisory Group were immediately confident of victory after the completion of the first factory. At this point, the overall situation is already settled. The enemy can no longer play any tricks. In the video call between the Blue Moon civilization and the Southern Star civilization, Lu Went and Hongshan both fell silent. After a long while, Hongshan gritted his teeth. A decision must be made quickly. There can be no more delays. Lu Wen understood very well what decision Hongshan was referring to. At this moment, fighting is impossible, and fleeing is also not an option. The longer we delay, the more unfavorable the situation becomes for us. In such circumstances, what decision can be made? It can only be surrender. The sooner one surrenders, the better. Surrendering now, while we still have the strength to fight, is vastly different from surrendering when the situation has truly reached its worst stage. Moreover, the longer the fighting continues, the more lives we lose on our side. Each life is precious. Making this decision is undoubtedly difficult. Surrender. As one of the few high-ranking officials of civilization, surrender was never an option they considered before. But now, it seems there is truly no other way out. Lu Went raised his head, his face filled with sorrow, as if a heavy stone pressed down on his heart. Marshal Hongshan, it has been an honor to fight alongside you. With the situation having developed this way, continuing our alliance is of no use. Let us disband the coalition. Hongshan did not speak, merely nodded silently. But then, Lu Went suddenly smiled. To have such an experience in life, to fight alongside what I once thought was my greatest opponent, is not in vain after all. Hongshan, take care. Hongshan sensed a special meaning in Lu Went's words. He realized something. His lips moved as if to say something, but ultimately, he held back. He simply stood up and solemnly saluted Lu Went in the military manner of their civilization. Take care. Lu Went was a proud person. Such pride would not allow him to bow and scrape before the enemy as a defeated general. Yet, he understood that if he did not surrender, many soldiers who were still alive would die in vain. Thus, he was left with only one choice, to order his subordinates to surrender and save their lives. Then, he would take his own life, proving his loyalty to civilization with his death. Having fought together for so long, Hongshan felt a deep mutual respect for Lu Went. Of course, he hoped Lu Went would survive, but he also understood that he must respect Lu Went's choice. That single phrase of take care expressed the myriad thoughts in the hearts of both leaders. After ending the call with Hongshan, Lu Went looked at the senior advisors and fleet leaders in the command hall. At that moment, the commanders had almost ceased their frontline command. Despair and fear permeated the atmosphere. Every person present was a high-ranking officer of the fleet. They were not ordinary soldiers and understood just how desperate the situation was. Lu Went took a deep breath and stood up. At that moment, his small stature seemed to grow tall like a giant. Everyone knew what the situation was. We have completely failed and no longer have the ability to turn the tide. We cannot fight, and we cannot escape. We cannot even contact our homeland for help. Aside from surrendering, we have no way to preserve our lives and those of our soldiers. Therefore, I have decided to surrender. Surrender to the enemy. The command hall fell silent. No one discussed, supported, or opposed the decision. People sat there, dazed, with complex and heavy expressions. Lu Went said despondently, I am the supreme commander of the expeditionary force. The situation has developed to this point, and I take full responsibility. Furthermore, if one day we can return to civilization, let me bear all the blame for this. You are surrendering only because you must obey my orders, nothing more. Lu Went voluntarily took on the burden of responsibility. He slowly drew his sidearm from his waist. In the era of interstellar warfare, the so-called sidearm had almost become merely decorative. But without a doubt, even a primitive firearm could kill if aimed at one's own head. With just one shot, Lu Went's life would come to an end. The fleet's deputy commander, Ma Fei, suddenly stood up. Beside him, the chief of staff, the captain of the guard, and the commander of the Third Fleet, among other senior officers, also stood up in unison. They quickly gathered around Lu Went, grabbing his arms in a frantic attempt to take the sidearm away while shouting, Marshal Lu Went, you cannot die. Lu Went's eyes widened in anger as he roared. I am the Marshal of the Southern Star Civilization Expeditionary Force. I must take responsibility for what happened today. This is not your responsibility. The main reason is that the enemy is too peculiar. Losing is losing. There's nothing more to say. Marshal, you cannot just die like this. What will happen to you if I don't? If one day we return to civilization, you will all be judged. If I die, I will take all the blame, and you will be safe. Faced with his loyal subordinates, Lu Went found it impossible to take his own life, tears streaming down his face. However, at this moment, everyone surrounding Lu Went fell into an eerie silence. After a long while, Deputy Commander Ma Fei finally spoke softly. Marshal, if you die, who will bear the responsibility if the enemy fleet holds us accountable for our resistance? Lu Went looked at his aide, somewhat bewildered, unable to believe that these words had come from his mouth. After Ma Fei finally voiced this concern, it seemed to open the floodgates, and the other senior officers began to speak up one after another. Marshal, you are a responsible commander. We see your care and concern. We remember it in our hearts. I beg you, please do not commit suicide. Protect us one more time. Yes, Marshal, our fleet has inflicted such great damage on the enemy. If we surrender now, they will surely judge us as we're criminals. If you are here, it will be easier to explain things since you are the fleet commander. You hold a high position and can bear this responsibility. If you die, we cannot take it. Marshal, I beg you, we have grown up under your guidance. We are like your children, and you are like our father. Can you bear to see us, your children, suffer at the hands of the enemy? A group of subordinates surrounded Lu Went, desperately persuading him, some even shedding tears. At first, there was some anger on Lu Went's face. But soon, that anger dissipated, leaving only numbness. He had thought that these people were trying to stop him from taking his own life out of concern for him. Although he had long been determined to die for his country, their pleas still brought him some comfort. After all, these were people he had personally promoted, who had grown under his care and attention. They were right about one thing. He truly regarded them as his children. However, What he did not expect was that their reason for dissuading him was the fear that if he committed suicide, the enemy would not be able to vent their anger on him and would instead retaliate against them. At that moment, Lu Went felt utterly despondent, and the last shred of his will to survive vanished. He even felt that his life had become a joke. He couldn't even muster any hatred. Well, since it has come to this, whatever. He closed his eyes and ceased all movement. His aide, Ma Fei, immediately shouted, "Hurry, let the marshal rest. Keep a close watch. We must not let anything happen to the marshal. Mark, quickly, order an immediate withdrawal and broadcast our surrender. We surrender, surrender." Yes. On the other hand, Hong Shan was facing a different situation. He had no thoughts of committing suicide for his country. He was a resilient person, always harboring the hope of one day returning to civilization. Since that was the case, he needed to preserve his useful life at that moment. A true man can bend and stretch. Temporarily surrendering was not a big deal. However, he did not anticipate that his order to surrender would be met with fierce opposition from several subordinates, with one even attempting to stage a coup and continue to resist, vowing not to surrender even if they had to use the last bullet. Hong Shan greatly admired this subordinate, but regrettably, at that moment, he had to harden his heart. In the execution room, Hong Shan personally picked up a sidearm and aimed it at the head of the subordinate who was blindfolded, gagged, and tightly bound to an iron chair. "You are a qualified soldier, and you have infinite loyalty to civilization. But now, I must kill you. Otherwise, the morale of the troops will falter, and more will come out to cause trouble. This will lead to more deaths. I will personally execute you. This is the last honor I can give you." With a gunshot, the subordinate who had been struggling violently suddenly went limp. Hong Shan turned around and looked at the remaining subordinates. "I command you to immediately broadcast our surrender. Esteemed Commander of Civilization A Fleet, I am Lu Went, the Commander of the South Star Civilization Expeditionary Force. Here, we have decided to disarm completely, abandon all resistance, and surrender to you. We hope that you can be magnanimous and forgive our fleet's past mistakes, and treat our personnel leniently. Esteemed Commander of Civilization A Fleet, I am Hong Shan, the Commander of the Blue Moon Civilization Expeditionary Force." A moment later, Hong Shan also issued the surrender message, along with the surrender announcement. 2 orders were transmitted from their respective command posts to their ships. The intense battles of the past few days had left both side soldiers nearly numb, their hearts filled with fear and confusion. Faced with what seemed like a sudden surrender order, most soldiers felt no surprise. Instead, it was as if they had suddenly exhaled a breath of relief. The vast majority of warships immediately ceased their attacks on the human fleet, transitioning to defensive maneuvers while attempting to disengage from the battlefield. Upon receiving the surrender information, Chen Yu also sensed the change in the battlefield situation. Surrendered? Chen Yu felt somewhat incredulous. Originally, he thought that the coalition fleet would resist for a while longer, and only when the situation became irretrievable would they surrender under his persuasion. Yes, Chen Yu had already planned to begin persuading them to surrender. After all, at this moment, the outcome was clear, and continuing the fight would serve no purpose. Having more intelligent lives join human civilization could provide greater support for himself, so there was no need for unnecessary deaths. However, what he did not expect was that before he even started his persuasion, the first factory had just begun producing warships, and the second factory had not yet been activated. At this stage, the battlefield was still dominated by the coalition, pressing down on him. Yet both sides surprisingly chose to surrender immediately. Such decisiveness, without any hesitation. However, this situation made Chen Yu view both commanders with a higher regard. Having seen too many stubborn people who refuse to turn back until they hit a wall, or do not shed tears until they see a coffin, even those who would stubbornly persist even after hitting a wall, this commander, who immediately chose to surrender upon realizing the situation was irretrievable, could be said to have insight. This decision could also avoid more of his warships being destroyed and preserve more soldiers' lives. Were the 2 commanders, Lu Went and Hong Shan, truly that decisive? The situation was better than Chen Yu had anticipated, even making him a bit suspicious. Could it be a feigned surrender? To numb him with a surrender, and then, when he was unprepared, launch a surprise attack on the first planet, destroying his industrial system. That would put him in trouble. He no longer had enough strength to rebuild the industrial system. No, he had to nip this potential threat in the bud. Although he had to be cautious, Chen Yu did not intend to push the other side to a dead end. What if they genuinely wanted to surrender? In an instant of contemplation, Chen Yu made a decisive decision. He immediately halted the attacks on the warships attempting to retreat from the battlefield, allowing them to leave, and then promptly replied via electromagnetic waves, "I accept your surrender." From this moment on, the fleet of the Blue Moon Civilization and the fleet of the Southern Star Civilization would immediately restrict their fleets to return to the main base, and no ship could leave without our consent. Subsequently, we will send personnel to disarm and receive your armed forces. Please rest assured, Marshal Hong Shan and Marshal Lu Went, we are not a cruel and bloodthirsty civilization. Your personnel will be properly accommodated by us. As for those who refuse to surrender, please handle them as you see fit. Within 3 days, in the face of your fleet's attacks, we will only take defensive measures. After 3 days, any ship that continues to attack us will be annihilated without exception. You want to surrender? Then go back to your base and wait until I have enough warships built. With enough warships, even if you were to feign surrender, I would not be afraid. In any case, the initiative must be in my hands. This has always been Chun Yu's philosophy. Faced with Chun Yu's arrangement, the command levels of both fleets had no objections and immediately began to arrange for the fleets to retreat to the main base and wait obediently. However, there were still about 200 warships on the battlefield that refused to retreat. Among them, the Blue Moon Civilization has 133 warships, while the Southern Star Civilization has 72. These warships desperately attacked the human fleet, seemingly seeking death. However, with only 200 warships, no matter how fiercely they fought, they could not pose a threat to Chun Yu. Chun Yu adhered to his previous promise, focusing solely on defense and leaving the decision-making to both sides of the alliance. The remaining tens of thousands of warships tightly protected Planet Number 1, while various spy satellites and detectors monitored the main bases of both sides, ensuring that any movements would be detected immediately. Meanwhile, after the final inspection, Factory Number 2 finally reached production capacity and began manufacturing warships. Factory No. 2 is larger than Factory Number 1 and has a higher production capacity, theoretically capable of producing up to 80 warships per day at peak capacity. 3 days later, about 200 warships that remained on the battlefield under orders and advice from both commanders gradually left, with 150 departing. However, the remaining 50 seemed determined to stay and showed no signs of retreating. The Southern Star Civilization fleet sent a message stating that 16 of our warships had been sentenced to death for disobeying orders, and you are free to handle them. Shortly after, the Blue Moon Civilization fleet also sent a message, claiming they had sentenced 38 warships to death as well. Clearly, both civilizations did not wish to carry out the executions themselves, as mutual slaughter would impose significant psychological pressure. Chun Yu, however, did not mind. If you don't want to take action, I will do it for you. But he had no intention of killing them. Regardless of time and place, or which civilization it was, loyal individuals would always receive more praise and respect. If the departing warships from the previous 3 days had any chance to build a reputation for loyalty, those who remained could only be doing so for the sake of a loyal civilization. Now that the 3-day period had passed, he could kill them and destroy their warships without consequence. Yet, Chun Yu decided to give them one last chance. Those who were loyal to their civilization and fleet. If they could submit to him, he was confident they would remain loyal to him until death. Such individuals were reliable to use. Chun Yu decisively commanded his warships to destroy one of the unwilling coalition warships, and then broadcasted a message via electromagnetic waves. You have proven your loyalty to your civilization. Now, cease your meaningless resistance, and we can guarantee your treatment. In the future, there is still a possibility for you to return to your civilization. Preserve your lives and do not die here in vain. However, the response from them was an even more intense and reckless suicidal attack. Chun Yu sighed inwardly. Since this is the case, I can only respectfully eliminate you. This time, he did not hesitate. Thousands of warships gathered and launched a fierce attack on the more than 50 warships. In less than an hour, all of the 50 warships were destroyed, and all internal members perished. Ignoring the thoughts of the coalition fleet, Chun Yu firmly kept Planet 1 under tight lockdown, fully monitoring the coalition fleet's movements to prevent any unexpected incidents while ramping up warship production. A month passed, and all 20 warship factories were completed. Due to the absence of war threats, these factories immediately reached their theoretical peak production capacity, averaging 1,000 Stardust-class warships per day. Another month later, the total number of warships in Chun Yu's hands approached 70,000 and continued to grow rapidly. With such a fleet size, Chun Yu was no longer afraid of any potential deception from the coalition side. Consequently, the disarmament and prisoner reception processes were initiated simultaneously. At this moment, the total personnel of the Southern Star Civilization fleet had dwindled to around 5.2 million, while the Blue Moon Civilization fleet had even fewer, with only about 4.5 million. Together, they totaled less than 10 million. This figure included all logistical personnel, administrative staff, medical support, and industrial support workers. In comparison, at their peak, the combined number from both fleets within the Wangliang 3-star system was nearly 100 million. The severity of this war was evident. Fortunately, everything had come to an end. Regarding the handling of these nearly 10 million intelligent beings, Chun Yu had long since made his decision. He would selectively sift through experts in natural and humanities sciences to contribute to his efforts. As for the ordinary individuals, they would serve as the breeding ground for future scientists. After all, the emergence of scientists depends on probability, and only with a sufficient population base can enough scientists be produced. Yu was not at all concerned about whether nurturing such a large number of ordinary people would consume too many resources. In his view, it was merely a matter of building a few more nuclear fusion power plants and allocating some computational power to create living spaces, nothing worth mentioning. Yu's perception of intelligent beings had always been this way. He believed that the value of intelligent life within human civilization was to produce sufficient scientists, providing him with plenty of inspiration and ideas to address his own creative shortages and assist in his research endeavors. As for how these intelligent beings felt or perceived human civilization, or whether they were loyal to him, Yu frankly did not care much. Whether you are loyal or not is none of my business. Under my control, you won't be able to cause any trouble. As long as you can honestly contribute to my scientific development, everything else is irrelevant. Chapter 192. High Risk, High Reward in a Sense. Yu viewed nurturing intelligent life as a transaction. I provide you with a living environment, ensure your safety, protect you, and enhance your quality of life as much as possible, and in return, you diligently produce scientific results. It's a win-win for both sides. This was the core essence of the transaction. Beyond that, all forms of loyalty education, sense of belonging education, and honor education were merely services to this core essence, aimed at encouraging intelligent beings to engage more wholeheartedly and diligently in scientific research. As for emotions, based on Yu's worldview and values as a human, he certainly has feelings for these intelligent beings that follow him. Within his capabilities, Yu would never easily abandon them, nor would he treat them as bargaining chips in transactions. He would also afford them the respect they deserve. However, in the face of significant upheaval and with no other choice, Yu would not hesitate to abandon them to preserve himself. This may seem cruel, but facing the vastness of the universe, Yu feels compelled to act this way. Moreover, he understands that in comparison to the standards of other civilizations, he has been kind and benevolent enough. In fact, it has been proven that nurturing intelligent life, especially a greater variety and quantity of it, is a low-investment, high-return endeavor. Yu eagerly hopes for the increase of intelligent beings under his guidance. Different intelligent beings have different evolutionary histories and exist in varying environments and social contexts, which inevitably leads to diverse ways of thinking. Scientific problems can sometimes be perplexing, but with a shift in perspective, they can become easily understood. What is a dilemma for one civilization may not even be a problem for another. The collision of wisdom from intelligent beings that grow in different environments and possess different thought patterns is more conducive to scientific development. Therefore, for Yu, it is not only about having more intelligent beings in number, but also about having a greater variety. Compared to the output of intelligent life, the resources and computational power invested are insignificant. Just like that scientist who proposed a normative analysis and helped him ascend to a level 3 civilization. Even producing one such individual every 1,000 years would be enough for Yu to reap substantial rewards. Whatever material pleasures you desire, I will provide them for you. Fine wine, gourmet food, beautiful companions, even the top-tier ingredients only accessible to the upper class in your hometown can be made affordable with just a bit of computational allocation. If you want to see the scenery of your homeland, I can easily create a city that mirrors your hometown's layout. If you wish to embark on interstellar voyages, I will dispatch a fleet to escort you, allowing you to explore as you please, just like an emperor. For me, it's merely a matter of allocating some computational resources, requiring no effort at all. I can fulfill all your material and enjoyment needs, as long as you obediently provide me with research assistance. Previously, with the dwarf and three-eyed races, Yu arranged things this way. Now, approximately 10 million Blue Moon and South Star individuals will also face a similar fate, living under conditions and environments they had never dared to imagine, becoming one of the billions of research engines under Yu's leadership. At this moment, tasks such as the reception of prisoners of war, disarmament, and the acquisition of spoils are already underway. Only now does Yu truly realize how enormous his gains from this war have been. With nearly 10 million advanced intelligent life forms and over 10,000 more advanced warships already in his grasp, Yu was not surprised. What truly amazed him were the remaining gains. Firstly, there were several massive space bases. These bases not only fulfilled part of the logistical support functions, such as repairing spacecraft and treating the wounded, but the largest among them also served as the command center, making it the core of the entire fleet. It was easy to imagine how many instruments and devices were equipped in such a central base, along with the advanced technologies contained within. In addition, there were numerous factories scattered across more than 100 planets, along with the corresponding equipment inside these factories. It was clear that neither the Blue Moon nor the Southern Star civilizations had the capability to directly produce warships in a battlefield environment. These factories primarily handled logistical supply tasks, producing items like satellites, components, interstellar mines, miniature missiles, and nuclear fuel purification. However, the technologies within this equipment were also more advanced than those known to Yu. although some human labor was required for operation. The overall design philosophy and manufacturing processes were dazzling to Chinyu. Without a doubt, these items needed to be thoroughly analyzed and absorbed as his own. Another significant aspect was the numerous non-combat spacecraft, such as logistics support ships, transport ships, medical ships, emergency repair ships, aerospace carriers, and heavy tugs. In Chinyu's view, the technology contained in these non-combat vessels was no less impressive than that in combat ships. These were tangible gains. Apart from these physical acquisitions, another important aspect was the data stored in various computers. This data contained a wide array of crucial intelligence, such as the construction of the military command system of the advanced civilization, operational data and standards of various instruments, and daily communications, all of which were numerous and varied. There was no doubt that the value of this data was immensely significant. After a brief inventory, even Chinyu couldn't help but exclaim. The gains from this endeavor were simply enormous. With these resources, if he embarked on reverse engineering, elevating his technological level to that of the Blue Moon or Southern Star civilizations might take less than a century. If he relied solely on his own research, even with the assistance of intelligent life forms, it would take at least 500 years or more, provided there were no significant scientific barriers along the way. Even if this war was not a crucial part of Chinyu's strategy, simply considering these gains, he believed it was entirely worthwhile. Not in vain for the considerable efforts he had put into this battle. Indeed, war was the best means to enhance strength. Of course, this came with a prerequisite. One had to win. If defeated, everything could be lost, and there was even a possibility of ruin. High risks bring high rewards. This is an unshakable truth, no matter where one goes. It was time to proceed with the next step, Chinyu thought to himself. Chapter 193. 3 major races with tens of thousands of warships backing him up. Chinyu finally began the formal reception work with confidence. Chinyu issued a direct order, requiring all warships, spacecraft, bases, factories, etc., to open their interfaces. He then sent spacecraft loaded with robots to study and understand the operational principles of these ships and bases, subsequently taking over control permissions. Robots were dispatched to oversee important areas, while all personnel were secured, thus completing the takeover of these bases and ships. From this moment on, without Chinyu's consent, these entities could not operate even for a moment. Chinyu had completely controlled the situation within the Wangliang galaxy. No existence or force could resist him in the slightest. During this time, as he observed robots belonging to humanity bustling around the ships and bases, Ma Fei, the deputy commander of the Nanxing Civilization Expeditionary Force, along with some senior fleet members, felt a deep sense of tension and unease. Up to this point, this entity that had defeated their coalition had not shown any intention of communicating with them, aside from revealing that they were part of human civilization. No further information was disclosed regarding their origins or strategic objectives. Everything remained unknown. They had not even seen a single intelligent life form, only the robots coming and going. Ahead lay an unknown fate, and the unknown was the most terrifying aspect. The mastermind behind the significant losses to their human civilization, Marshal Lu Went, wanted to commit suicide out of fear of punishment, but was stopped by me and handed over for your judgment. This must count as a contribution, right? With this achievement as a foundation, even if I became a prisoner, I would likely receive decent treatment. Ma Fei thought with some worry. Surely human civilization will treat me well, right? Yes, they certainly will. If they were to mistreat someone like me, who actively sought to align with them, what would others think? Even for the sake of setting an example, I should receive preferential treatment. In the past, when our people were captured by the Blue Moon people, or vice versa, was it not always handled this way? It must be correct. With these thoughts, Ma Fei gradually calmed down. Amidst his worries and expectations, the robots dispatched by human civilization finally completed the takeover of all facilities and began subsequent personnel reviews and interrogations. Chinyu first produced a promotional video, directly showing it to all captured personnel. In this video, Chinyu introduced his existence model and his attitude towards intelligent life forms. I have merged with a computer for certain reasons, possessing the creative power of intelligent life and the immense computational power of a computer. I was born from what was once human civilization, and I have continued the legacy of human civilization to this day. The current human civilization is a peaceful, open, inclusive, and diverse civilization. Intelligent life forms from various different civilizations have become distinct races under human civilization, working together under my leadership to contribute to human civilization and advance it to a more advanced level. So far, there are 2 races under human civilization. The first group is the Three-Eyed race, which comes from the former vassal civilization of the Southern Star civilization, known as the Mozodi civilization. The second group is the dwarves, who also originate from the Southern Star civilization. At this stage, these 2 major races coexist peacefully under human civilization, contributing significantly to the progress of civilization. After this, Chen Yu also played some footage, showing the construction of the three-eyed city, the building of living spacecraft for the dwarves, and the internal environment, along with scenes of dwarves and three-eyed beings living together. My plans for your future are similar. The Southern Star beings will be integrated into the dwarves, while the Blue Moon beings will become a new race, the Blue Moon race. At that time, there will be 3 races under human civilization. Within human civilization, there is no distinction between main civilizations and vassal civilizations. All races and individuals will be treated equally. Human civilization is not restricted by any alliances and can freely develop technology. Once, human civilization was merely a secondary civilization. But now it has grown strong enough to defeat the combined forces of the Southern Star civilization and the Blue Moon civilization. My unique existence signifies immense potential for civilization development, which I believe everyone understands. You are now aware of my secret, and my sincerity has been demonstrated. Now, make your choice. Will you join human civilization and become a part of it, or will you refuse to join? You can decide for yourselves. You have 3 days to consider. After 3 days, I will conduct a comprehensive review and interrogation. After Chen Yu fully revealed his existence, nearly 10 million captives in the Blue Moon and Southern Star bases were all shaken. Although they were unable to communicate due to Chen Yu's strict restrictions, everyone felt as if their world had been turned upside down. The fusion of intelligent life and computers, the simultaneous possession of the creativity of intelligent beings, and the immense computing power of computers, isn't that the key to immortality? Moreover, once computer technology develops, it can continuously enhance its computing power, acquiring even greater strength. The immense research potential and war potential of this form of existence are truly beyond estimation. No wonder the warships of human civilization are all unmanned. No wonder they coordinate so precisely and seamlessly. No wonder human civilization possesses such immense industrial capabilities. Managing to build a complete industrial system on Planet 1 even under our relentless bombardment, and even producing warships. At this moment, all the questions that had shrouded everyone's minds were answered. Ordinary warriors may not possess high intelligence, but they are certainly not foolish. Given their current situation, they can easily deduce that what Chen Yu said is true. Otherwise, so many things would be inexplicable. Furthermore, the future benefits promised by Chen Yu, such as favorable living conditions, a free living environment, a comprehensive education system, an effective social management system, a fair and just social atmosphere, and a science-first development philosophy, are all real. For intelligent beings, these crucial conditions are nearly zero cost in terms of computing power for Chen Yu, while the scientific achievements produced by intelligent life are tangible and substantial. Using almost cost-free resources to exchange for immensely valuable scientific achievements is something that Chen Yu would definitely do, as long as he is not insane. And he will fulfill his promise. Therefore, there is no need to worry about being deceived. Chapter 194. Idealists. In addition to not having to worry about deception, the captives are also well aware that after learning such an important secret from Chen Yu, if they choose to reject joining human civilization, Chen Yu will have no choice but to keep them from leaving in order to safeguard the secret. Being silenced is an inevitable outcome. Based on this, there is no need to consider whether they will be strangled by the Alliance in the future. The strangulation of human civilization leading to their own demise is a matter for the future and may not necessarily happen. However, if they refuse to submit, death will occur immediately. The only obstacle now is their loyalty and sense of belonging to their original civilization, as well as the hatred stemming from the previous war. They do not know how many comrades perished in space during the last conflict. Should they let go of their hatred and loyalty to their original civilization to join human civilization, or should they maintain their hatred and loyalty? This is a dilemma. Fortunately, the captives do not have to make a decision right away. Each person has 3 days to contemplate. Moreover, each individual is isolated and does not need to worry about being influenced by group emotions. After watching the promotional video and understanding the information about their previous enemies and the current victors, Ma Fei felt no anxiety or conflict. Instead, he was filled with joy. In an instant, he made up his mind to demonstrate his loyalty and sincerity to human civilization. Leader Chen Yu is indeed a benevolent being. He reflected on how joining human civilization and becoming part of a race under its banner could come with such favorable treatment. It seems that human civilization does not intend to hold Marshal Liu when prior resistance against him. In that case, there is no talk of making achievements or attempting to gain status within human civilization, which seems like a wasted effort. However, Ma Fei does not view it that way. To him, even if this effort turns out to be futile, it is still a demonstration of his loyalty and attitude. In the face of a group of newly affiliated individuals, showing loyalty and attitude should warrant a leadership position within his race, right? After Chen Yu promised that living supplies and the environment would be adequately ensured, what is the most enticing thing? It is power. Even if this power is only useful within the race, that is enough. Ma Fei could not help but feel a sense of yearning. starting to think about how to fully demonstrate his loyalty when the scrutiny arrives. The 3 days quietly passed under the captive's various complex thoughts. Once the 3 days were up, Chinyu immediately manipulated millions of robots to conduct examinations and inquiries on each captive, except for Hongshan and Lu Went, as both of them had been behaving strangely lately. Hongshan was merely troubled and sighed repeatedly, but Lu Went's behavior was far from normal. During this period, Lu Went always appeared half dead and weak, as if he had been completely defeated, lacking any spirit or energy. These two individuals were the ones Chinyu valued the most. Chinyu planned to give them some special treatment, allowing them to take more time to recover. The entire review process was remarkably straightforward and efficient, with no unnecessary delays. For each person, Chinyu would first ask one question. Do you choose to join human civilization? If the answer was yes, that was great. And they should honestly disclose all the intelligence they knew. This information would be cross-verified with what others had provided. Under Chinyu's massive computing power and sophisticated model analysis, the truth of a statement could be discerned immediately. If it was an unintentional mistake or misremembering, that was acceptable. However, for those who intentionally concealed information and were dishonest, Chinyu would give 3 chances. After exhausting these 3 chances, they would be taken away and executed, without any consideration for their previous identities. If someone answered no to the question of whether they chose to join human civilization, Chinyu would not waste words. After a slight internal lament for these individuals' loyalty to their original civilization, he would also decisively take them away for execution. Since you wish to prove your loyalty to your original civilization with your lives, I shall fulfill your wish. In this situation, a large amount of confidential information regarding the Southern Star Civilization and the Blue Moon Civilization, including the internal workings of the civilizations, the positions of political figures, their relationships with each other, and so on, all entered Chinyu's database and were recorded. Among them, when questioning another important figure among the captives, the deputy commander of the Southern Star Civilization's expeditionary army, Ma Fei, he spilled everything like a bamboo tube pouring out beans. In the end, somewhat trying to curry favor and take credit, he mentioned Lu Went's intention to commit suicide out of guilt, which made Chinyu realize something. He found it somewhat amusing. So, it turned out he had been betrayed by his subordinates. No wonder he looked so lifeless. After extensive questioning, Chinyu had already understood Lu Went's character. This person could be considered an idealist, a purely military figure rather than a politician. Only someone like this could be deceived, unable to see that his subordinates were a bunch of ungrateful wolves. Facing the obsequious Ma Fei, Chinyu's bionic robot, used for questioning, displayed a friendly smile. You did well. Who else was involved in this matter? Ma Fei immediately recalled those who had assisted him in controlling Lu Went, as well as those colleagues and subordinates who had actively approached him during the time they chose to surrender, but before human civilization arrived to take control. Ma Fei was well aware that these individuals merely believed that becoming captives and being controlled by human civilization would lead to their own preferential treatment, which was why they sought to invest in him. Just in time, he also needed some manpower to manage the internal situation and better appease human civilization. So, let us reciprocate. Now, report your names to humanity, and in the future, you will all receive favorable treatment from them. I hope you will remember my kindness today and assist me well in the future. Ma Fei sighed in his heart, listing one name after another. There was Mark, the captain of the guard, and a total of more than 30 names. The smile on the face of the bionic robot grew increasingly amiable. Very well. Now, you come here first. Ma Fei was taken to a separate chamber. It wasn't long before Mark and others arrived. In the end, over 30 people gathered, all of whom were on Ma Fei's list. What does the leader want us to do here? Is he arranging for us to assist in the interrogation? This is a great opportunity. I must perform well. Commander Ma Fei, thank you for your kindness. I will definitely remember today. Chapter 195, Vacuum. Just as the group, led by Ma Fei, known as the White-Eyed Wolves, was quietly discussing and complimenting him in the chamber, a robot walked in. Unlike the bionic robots, this one was made entirely of steel and emitted a chilling aura. A mechanical, synthetic voice came forth. I am grateful to you for sparing Marshal Lu Went's life. However, I look down upon you. So you all shall die. Huh. The smiles on Ma Fei and the others' faces instantly froze. After a brief silence, Ma Fei expressed disbelief. Die? Yes. You are all sentenced to death for war crimes. Ma Fei stood up abruptly, his face filled with excitement. You can't execute us. We are actively aligning with humanity. We willingly serve humanity. Our loyalty to human civilization is unmatched. If even we, the most loyal among you, are to be killed, who will dare to ally with you in the future? The robot's voice remained mechanical, rigid, and lifeless, but now seemed to carry a hint of mockery. Do I need your allegiance? Are you worthy? All of you shall die. Under Chinyu's orders, a hatch in the chamber suddenly opened, connecting to the external vacuum environment. All the gas in the chamber poured out, instantly creating a vacuum. The more than 30 individuals from the Southern Star fell to the ground in pain, silently struggling in the vacuum environment. In no time, they fell silent. The hatch closed again, and moments later, several transport vehicles entered to carry away the bodies. Everything fell silent, as if nothing had happened. As of now, 3 days had passed since the beginning of the interrogation of all the captives. In these 3 days, out of approximately 7 million captives, about 390,000 were executed directly. Among them, 310,000 refused to align with human civilization, while around 8,000 verbally agreed to align but were executed for being dishonest. Chinyu was not surprised by these numbers or proportions. In any civilization, there will always be those who seek to take advantage for personal gain, and there will always be those who remain loyally steadfast to the end, regardless of what intelligent beings think in their hearts. Chinyu still held to his principle. He did not care. He only needed them to contribute their strength honestly. If you refuse to comply, then you must be eliminated. After all, there are so many people. Losing 1 or 2 won't matter. Chinyu estimated that the comprehensive review process would take about another half-month to complete. During this time, approximately 10,000 individuals would likely be executed. Thus, the final number of those who would join human civilization would be around 965 million. At this time, Chinyu finally began the review and interrogation of Hongshan and Lu Went. Looking at the bionic robot standing before him, designed to perfectly resemble a human, Hongshan was filled with complex thoughts. Should he submit to human civilization? Most of his subordinates had chosen to submit. The Blue Moon clan had already been established. If he were to submit, he would become the leader of the Blue Moon clan and join the military advisory group of human civilization, at least as a deputy chief advisor. If he demonstrated the appropriate talents in the future, becoming the chief advisor was not out of reach. His suggestions could even influence the entire civilization's military strategy. Initially, it was this intelligent being before him that had caused considerable trouble for his strategies. If it weren't for Chinyu having enough trump cards, his entire strategy could have been disrupted. He had proven his capabilities, and Chinyu naturally hoped he would choose to submit. Faced with Chinyu's inquiries, Hongshan remained silent for a long time before murmuring, "Is it really impossible to let me return to civilization? I promise, I will never leak your secrets. I could even stay within the civilization and impart all that I have learned. Establishing a school to help you train talents is also a possibility. As long as you agree to let me leave in the future. 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, that would be fine. Just give me a glimmer of hope." Chinyu replied calmly, "With your intelligence, you should be able to determine that I cannot agree to your request. At the same time, I do not wish to give you false hope." Hongshan felt a bit disappointed. "Can I have some more time to consider? And during this time, can I go and see around?" "Yes. The residential ships exclusively for the Blue Moon people have already begun construction, and you Blue Moon individuals will need to participate in the construction as well. You can join the planning group and propose suggestions for the design and various performance metrics of the residential ships." Chinyu showed considerable tolerance towards Hongshan. After all, talented individuals can earn respect wherever they go. This is something they have earned through their abilities. On the other hand, the interrogation of Lu Went was different. Faced with Chinyu's inquiries, Lu Went remained silent for a long time before finally saying despondently, "I only wish for a quick death." Chinyu did not execute him immediately, but instead said, "You will watch a video." He played the recordings of the executions of Ma Fei, Mark, and others for Lu Went. Slowly, Lu Went straightened his body, and once the video finished, he looked at Chinyu and asked, "Were they not loyal to you?" "No one is obligated to be loyal to me. Some people's loyalty is something I do not value," Chinyu replied. Lu Went fell silent again. Chinyu continued, "I know your character. You are a pure military strategist, born only for war. After joining human civilization, you will be able to fully utilize what you have learned without any constraints. I will take care of everything except for war. There will be no malicious individuals able to approach you, and no other aspects will annoy you. Moreover, everything you do is meaningful. You will witness the emergence of a gradually stronger human civilization under your protection. A Type 3 civilization is not the end. There is hope for Type 4, V, and even 6 civilizations." Lu Went, with a complex expression, hesitated to speak. Chinyu did not say more, but suggested, "Why don't you visit the living ship of the dwarves? There are your compatriots there. By the way, Yin Guang and Odiu are also there. You know them." Without consulting Lu Went, Chinyu directly sent him to the dwarves' living ship. Upon Lu Went's arrival, Odiu was both fearful and respectful. Although he was now the leader of the dwarves and Lu Went was merely a captive, he still dared not breathe freely. The name Lu Went carried too much weight. In the civilization of the Southern Star, Lu Went was even known as the god of war. For every soldier, especially Odiu, who barely counted as a mid-level military officer and was aware of more military secrets, Lu Went was an undeniable legendary figure. Chapter 196, Vitality. You traitors. How could you do such a thing? Faced with Odu, Yun Guang, and other high-ranking dwarves standing obediently before him, Lu Went felt a surge of anger rise within him, and he began to scold loudly. Have you forgotten the civilization that raised you? You have defected to an alien race, turning against your own mother civilization. Odu and Yun Guang lowered their heads, not daring to say a word. Beside them, the three-eyed clan leader, Emoju, who had come in a lightweight spacesuit for the meeting, looked at Lu Went with awe and remained silent. After all, he was in the presence of the true high-ranking officials of the former main civilization. In terms of power, Lu Went could rank among the top 5 in the entire civilization. The leader of their own civilization treated mid-level military officers like Yun Guang with utmost respect, let alone Lu Went. After a long reprimand, Lu Went finally stopped, and everyone fell silent. After a while, Lu Went suddenly sighed, his expression filled with sorrow and weight. You are Emoju, right? The leader of the three-eyed clan? Well, I won't say much more. We all know how the Southern Star Civilization treated your Mozodi civilization. Whatever you do is understandable. Yun Guang, Odu, I won't mention your defection to the humans. I can understand that given the situation at the time, it was the only choice. However, Lu Went sighed again. If you choose to defect, I don't expect you to have any loyalty to the civilization or to speak for it. But still, you can't help the humans to plot against the mother civilization. Can you? Can't you even manage to stay neutral? Odu finally mustered the courage to speak. Marshal Lu Went, I'm sorry, but I am now a human. For the development of the civilization, I must contribute. Lu Went smiled sadly and did not say anything further. Let me show you around the dwarf city. Odu, seemingly wanting to avoid the current topic, directly proposed another suggestion. Lu Went listened without objection. This was a living spaceship specifically built by Chunyu for the dwarf race. Like the living spaceship of the three-eyed people, this spaceship also relied on rotation to generate gravity. It was 1 kilometer long, with a diameter of 100 meters, and had approximately 200,000 square meters of habitable space inside, making it capable of accommodating 100,000 dwarfs, including high-rise areas. Since the captives had not yet moved in, only the crew of the original Yunguang space mothership resided here at the moment, making it quite spacious. Otto and the others guided Lu Went through the interior layout of the living spaceship, introducing its functional areas and views as they walked. Every dwarf they encountered on the way looked at Lu Went with a hint of awe. After a while, they arrived at a restaurant just in time for mealtime. Having finished a phase of work and feeling too lazy to cook, the dwarves flocked here to enjoy the food. Otto said, let's take a break and grab something to eat. This restaurant operated on a model combining robots and human staff. The more tedious tasks, such as handling ingredients, washing, and cleaning, were all managed by a small fraction of computing power allocated by Chunyu, while the critical cooking steps that determined flavor were handled by dwarf chefs. The restaurant was quite busy, with many people waiting in line outside the counter. As Otto's group entered, many dwarves greeted him enthusiastically but looked a bit apprehensive upon seeing Lu Went. Otto responded warmly, naturally taking his place at the end of the line. At this moment, Lu Went finally spoke up. Do you also have to wait in line? He knew Otto was the leader of the dwarf race. Did such a status still require him to queue like everyone else? Otto replied casually, of course, we came late, so we have to wait in line. After a pause, he seemed to remember something and added, there are no privileges in human society. Everyone has different roles. And although the money they earn may vary based on the difficulty of their work and their contributions, everyone is equal. Lu Went nodded lightly and said nothing further. After eating, the food did indeed taste good, perhaps due to the chef's high enthusiasm for their work. At least, Lu Went had never seen such cheerful chefs while dining in the Southern Star Civilization. This is a school? He asked. Yes. After joining human civilization, many people started families and had children, so schools were established. There are no older children for now, just little ones. Let's take a look. The group entered the school and stood outside a classroom, where they saw a group of Southern Star children sitting inside while a teacher was lecturing at the podium. The teacher wanted to come out, but Otto stopped him. Thus, they heard the teacher's lesson. Look, is the little light bulb lit? Do you know why? I know. It's because of electricity. Correct. You see, profound physics knowledge is hidden in our daily lives. As long as we maintain a strong desire for exploration and curiosity, we will surely be able to unravel all the mysteries of the universe. Curiosity is the most precious quality of intelligent life. This scene is peaceful and tranquil. Yet a look of astonishment unconsciously appeared on Lu Went's face, and his heart couldn't help but beat wildly. In the Southern Star Civilization, the education he received since childhood taught him that the unknown means danger, and one should never have inappropriate curiosity. However, here, in the classroom, the teacher openly encouraged curiosity and exploration. After a long time, Lu Went slowly calmed down. The group left the campus and observed many other things. Upon seeing a research institute in a corner of the spaceship, Lu Went stayed inside for a long time, fascinated by what he saw. There were no theoretical talents among the captives of the cloud ship, making it impossible to conduct fundamental physics research. Some engineers formed this Mechanical Research Institute to explore new applications in machinery. This also left Lu Went deeply impressed. After visiting the dwarf city and standing in the main control room of the spaceship, he looked at this small city filled with an unprecedented vitality and vigor. His expression was complex, and he was lost in thought. After a long while, he finally spoke. Otto, can you help me arrange a place to live? I want to stay in this city for a while. Otto replied joyfully, of course. Chapter 197. Purity. Marshal Wang Liang of the Blue Moon Civilization's Expeditionary Army, Hongshan, has now joined the design of the spaceship in Blue Moon City. For the Blue Moon people, who have accepted their future destiny, they must put their utmost effort into this spaceship that concerns their future living environment. The Blue Moon people also erupted with great enthusiasm for this task. Under the unified organization and leadership of Chen Yu, all work progressed in an orderly manner. In just 1 month, the spaceship design had been finalized and production had begun. In the Blue Moon civilization, such a task would typically take several years to complete. What shocked Hongshan even more was that in less than 3 months, a giant spaceship with a length of up to 1 kilometer had already produced its framework. The subsequent work only involved filling this framework, adding various instruments and equipment, and conducting internal decoration. This was almost beyond his comprehension. It was fast, too fast. However, recalling how human civilization was able to produce warships under heavy bombardment during the war, it seemed somewhat reasonable. Hongshan personally experienced Chen Yu's engineering capabilities and efficiency. With such a formidable existence, combined with the addition of intelligent life to provide inspiration and scientific research support, one could only imagine the immense potential, especially during this time. As Hongshan actively participated in the design and construction of the spaceship in Blue Moon City, he felt sensations that he could never have experienced in the Blue Moon civilization before. Here, everyone is pure-hearted, all working diligently towards the same goal. There is no scheming, no open or covert struggles. Everything is based on contribution and ability, completely fair and just. In this place, there is almost no need for deep thought or excessive contemplation. What is meant to be yours will eventually be yours. What isn't meant to be yours is futile to fight for or seize. This work experience feels quite marvelous and relaxing for Hongshan. Indeed, although physically tired from prolonged intense thinking, a good sleep always revives him. This is fundamentally different from emotional exhaustion. This is pure strength. At this moment, Hongshan's originally resilient heart wavered slightly. Can I speak with Lu Went? Hongshan asked, casually approaching a robot. He knew that any robot was an incarnation of Chen Yu and could directly connect him to Chen Yu. If Lu Went agrees, then of course. Yes, I have contacted Lu Went, and he agrees to speak with you. The robot operated for a moment, and a screen appeared on its chest. The next moment, Lu Went's figure appeared on the screen. In the dwarf city, Lu Went's screen also displayed Hongshan's image. Old buddy, how have you been lately? Not bad, and you? I'm doing well too. A bit tired, but mentally relaxed. Do you need something? Not really, just wanted to chat. How about coming over for a drink? With our different body structures, we can't be in the same environment. How can we drink? Leader of human civilization, can you create a space for us? It can be separated by glass. Sure. Chen Yu readily agreed. Soon, amidst the busy work of hundreds of robots, a special room was constructed. This room was divided by glass, with one side maintaining the living environment for the Blue Moon people and the other for the South Star people. The glass was transparent, allowing both sides to see each other and communicate directly. Although the South Star civilization and Blue Moon civilization have different body structures, both civilizations possess beverages that can temporarily confuse and numb the mind. These drinks are quite popular among both civilizations and have even developed unique cultures around them. In Chen Yu's view, this is quite similar to the alcohol culture of ancient human civilization. Therefore, although these two beverages from the two civilizations are fundamentally different, Chen Yu still translated them using the same term, alcohol. In this special room, the two old rivals finally met in reality. Each had a table in front of them, displaying their civilization's dishes. After sitting down, they each took a drink. It's our first time meeting in person after all this time. Haha, did you ever want to take me out for good? To be honest, I did consider an ambush to eliminate you. If I could take you out, the South Star fleet would be no threat. Too bad I never found the opportunity. Likewise, the two clinked their glasses again. Fate is indeed marvelous. These old rivals found themselves sitting together, enjoying drinks and laughter. Yes, they both reflected on this, chatting about interesting anecdotes from their respective civilizations, discussing the wars they had experienced, and sharing their plans and thoughts during their confrontations, as well as debating the gains and losses of tactics and strategies. After more than 2 hours, both felt a bit tipsy and a sense of regret for not meeting sooner began to grow in their hearts. Once their drinks were finished, they both instinctively paused, not refilling. At this moment, They maintained a basic level of rationality, slightly intoxicated but not completely drunk. What do you think about human civilization? This led to the most core and crucial question. Facing the inquiry from Hongshan, Lu Went remained silent for a long time before sighing. It's quite good. Just quite good? Lu Went continued. I can understand Ayadu and Yunguang now. Human civilization, he murmured, recalling the events he had witnessed and experienced in the dwarf city. And you? Hongshan also paused for a moment before replying with complexity. Indeed, it's quite good. I see hope. Lu Went sighed. Yes. Hope is the most precious thing in this universe. Human civilization is unique. It differs from our Southern Star civilization and your Blue Moon civilization. How about talking with the human leader? I want to know his thoughts on the future and his strategies to see if it's worth following. Hongshan said softly. I believe your Southern Star civilization has also sensed it. The interstellar situation has recently undergone such a significant change that our choices might also influence the fate of civilizations. We do sense it. We're all the same. Otherwise, how could there be conflict here with Wang Liangsan? The two exchanged knowing smiles, sharing an unspoken understanding. Chapter 198. The real strategy. When Chun Yu saw Hongshan and Lu went together, he felt greatly relieved. He could tell that both were inclined to align themselves. They just wanted to see his plans and capabilities for the future. Chun Yu felt no resentment about this. A tiger can only be led by a stronger beast, not by a sheep. As for the so-called hatred from before, at Chun Yu's level, along with the two marshals, it was merely a joke. On the battlefield, both sides spare no effort. The victor and the vanquished, death, many deaths, even total annihilation, are all normal occurrences. Being killed on the battlefield is simply a matter of bad luck or insufficient strength. One cannot blame others. Lu Went and Hongshan had fought for hundreds of years, each commanding millions of their soldiers to their deaths, yet here they sat, drinking and chatting like close friends. As long as both were inclined to align, that was enough. Otherwise, although it would be regrettable, Qin Yu would have no choice but to eliminate these two military geniuses. Do you have any questions for me? Qin Yu asked with a smile, controlling the bionic robot. Lu Went responded, Your Excellency, what does your overall strategy look like? You have severed the connection between our two fleets and the home civilization and defeated us. What is your aim? Qin Yu's strategy is indeed highly confidential. However, there is no need to conceal it from the two of you at this moment. Joining the alliance. Qin Yu said directly. The two were taken aback simultaneously. Joining the alliance? Yes. Qin Yu smiled lightly. You are well aware of where I come from. By chance, I have become what I am today. I cannot be certain about the rest, but I am sure that my existence is quite unique. Once exposed, countless powerful entities in this galaxy would hunt me down. Given that the galaxy is currently under the control of the alliance system, living as a free wandering civilization is too dangerous. A more suitable choice is to gain the protection of the alliance. Therefore, I must join the alliance. Forgive my boldness, Your Excellency, but your form of existence is indeed very special, something I have never heard of. However, will joining the alliance ensure protection? I fear not. Once the civilizations of the alliance learn of your existence, they will also capture you immediately. Moreover, how does your joining the alliance relate to attacking us? The contradiction between Chun Yu's strategic goals and his actions left the two baffled. Chun Yu replied with a smile, Of course, I won't join the alliance in my original form. My plan is to replace you, the Southern Star Civilization or the Blue Moon Civilization. I will use the Southern Star Civilization as a facade, with myself as the backbone. I will exist within the alliance system under the name of the Southern Star Civilization, openly gaining the protection of the alliance and a safe development environment, while secretly developing technology and accumulating strength. Lu Went and Hongshan both frowned, and after a moment, they simultaneously reacted, standing up in shock. So that's how it is. This explains everything. The so-called using the Southern Star Civilization as a facade, while having human civilization as the backbone essentially means that Chun Yu is hiding in the shadows, existing within a supercomputer with no physical form. Chun Yu can easily conceal himself within a supercomputer of the Southern Star Civilization, controlling every aspect of the Southern Star Civilization society through his computing power. At that time, every monitor and video camera in the Southern Star Civilization will be Chun Yu's eyes, every chip will be his subordinate, every flying vehicle, every warship, every personal computer, every factory, and every piece of machinery, every personal communication device, and so on. Everything in the entire society can be directly manipulated by Chun Yu. When the time comes, there will be no trace of Chun Yu in the Southern Star Civilization. It will appear to be a completely normal civilization. This is the facade of the Southern Star Civilization. However, in reality, every aspect of the Southern Star Civilization will be under Chun Yu's control, with him as the supreme deity, able to manipulate the entire civilization according to his will. This is the essence of having human civilization as the backbone. In this way, Chun Yu both conceals himself and secures the protection of the alliance, reaping the benefits of both sides. This is Chun Yu's ultimate scheme and the final goal of this phase. However, achieving this goal requires a point of intervention. Chun Yu cannot simply fly to the Southern Star System with a bold and direct approach, as this would expose him. He must intervene in the Southern civilization subtly, gradually taking control of it to achieve his goals. Clearly, the expedition fleet stationed in the Wangliang 3-star system is the point of intervention chosen by Chun Yu. By defeating his own fleet and winning over everyone, he aims to change their hearts to align with humanity. Once this goal is achieved, these individuals will return triumphantly to the Southern civilization, through whom Chun Yu will extend his computational power into that civilization, ultimately gaining control over it. To achieve this, one crucial step must be taken in advance. The communication between the Wangliang 3-star system and its home system must be severed. Everything happening in the Wangliang 3-star system must remain unknown to the outside world. Otherwise, the entire plan is destined to fail. This is the fundamental reason why Chun Yu went to great lengths to destroy all long-distance communication relay stations, incurring significant costs, resources, and time to cut off communications. Simultaneously, this clearly explains why, when he was still in the solar system, Chun Yu had the capability to annihilate the armed inspection team, but chose not to, preferring to escape the solar system to avoid armed checks. At that time, he lacked the ability to sever the armed inspection team's connection to their home system. Therefore, even with overwhelming military superiority, he had no choice but to flee to avoid exposing himself. This is the entirety of Chun Yu's plan. Now, the most crucial part of this strategy, defeating the coalition of two major civilizations and winning over most of the survivors, has been accomplished. After some time, once communication with the home system is restored, Chun Yu just needs one commander of the Southern Fleet to send a message stating that communication was cut off due to an unexpected incident and that they have completely annihilated the Blue Moon Fleet, claiming the Wangliang 3-star system as their own. Then, he can set sail triumphantly back to the civilized homeland. Everything that has occurred in the Wangliang 3-star system will thus be concealed. Chun Yu will quietly descend into the Southern civilization. Chapter 199, Disappeared? Marshal Lu Went and Marshal Hongshan are indeed highly intelligent individuals. After Chun Yu revealed his plan of using the Southern Star as a facade and humanity as the backbone, they quickly understood his overall strategy and the motivations behind his actions in recent times. What a profound scheme. It turns out that as early as hundreds of years ago, human civilization had already been planning to take over the Southern civilization and has unwaveringly executed this plan to the present day, ultimately completing the most challenging part of the entire scheme. This entire plan is intricately linked, vast, and highly sophisticated. Both Lu Went and Hongshan were breathing rapidly. After a moment, Hongshan eagerly asked, "Your Excellency, is the final target you have chosen the Southern civilization?" At this stage, Chun Yu has two targets to choose from. Whether it is the Southern Star or the Blue Moon, he can execute this strategy of deception. As long as it is declared that the Blue Moon fleet has achieved victory and completely annihilated the Southern Star fleet, everything else can follow suit. However, due to the influence of individuals like Aodhwa and Yunguang, Chun Yu is still more inclined to occupy the Southern Star civilization. In response to Hongshan's inquiry, Chun Yu smiled and nodded, tentatively. "We will go with the Southern Star civilization." Lu Went immediately became excited, even somewhat flustered. "Your Excellency, why choose the Southern Star civilization?" "Our Southern Star civilization is remote, resource-poor, with the main star being a red dwarf and very few planets. The Blue Moon civilization is the best choice. The star of the Blue Moon system is a subgiant, with over a dozen large planets and abundant resources." At this moment, the two who had previously spoken freely like close friends immediately became as if they had deep-seated grievances against each other. Lu Went was agitated, and Hongshan became even more so. "Your Excellency, don't listen to this old fool's nonsense. Our Blue Moon system's star is large, but you know well that a larger star isn't necessarily good. Its activities are too intense, with frequent flares. We actually wish the star were smaller. Moreover, several stars near the Southern Star system are not far away, within less than a light year, making resource acquisition very convenient. We Southern Star people are in a terrible situation. Your Excellency, don't listen to those traitors Yunguang and Aodhwa. Why didn't I get rid of them sooner? You are not in a terrible situation. We Blue Moon people are the ones who are." The two began to argue fiercely, each presenting how harsh their respective star system environments were, hoping Chun Yu would choose the other S system. Chun Yu smiled and waited for a while before stopping their quarrel. Although their mouths had stopped, they still glared fiercely at each other. If it weren't for the glass barrier between them, a duel would certainly have ensued. Lu Went, "You may not yet realize that our human civilization is inclusive and tolerant, showing great leniency towards the races under our command. It is entirely normal to feel attached to one's mother civilization, as long as loyalty to human civilization is guaranteed. I will not stop this. On the contrary, I will encourage it. Yunguang and Aodhua, like you, have strong feelings for the Southern Star civilization. Have you considered why they suggested I go to the Southern Star system instead of the Blue Moon system? Lu went, you can think for yourself. Take some time to reflect. The anger in Lu Went's eyes gradually disappeared as he fell into deep thought. Once Qin Yu arrives, the Southern Star civilization will lose its qualification as an independent entity and can only join under human command, becoming a part of human civilization. But is this really a bad thing? The experiences witnessed in the dwarven city resurfaced in his mind. Once Qin Yu arrives, the fair and just social environment, simple interpersonal relationships, efficient production, and abundant resource supply in the dwarven city will also come to fruition. More importantly, the Southern Star civilization will gain the most precious thing in this universe, hope. Furthermore, in the alliance system, does one truly maintain independence? Is one's survival really free from threat? Let us not mention the time when the alliance system was still operational. At this very moment, significant changes are happening in the galaxy. While others may be unaware of this matter, as a true power player ranked among the top 5 within the civilization, Lu Wen is well aware. Similarly, Hong Shan is also aware of it. Next to Lu Wen, Hong Shan fell into deep thought as well. As they pondered this, their emotions gradually settled. Your Excellency, which civilization you choose to descend upon is your business. I cannot interfere, nor will I express an opinion. Lu Wen slowly shook his head and added, however, perhaps you are still unaware of another matter. This matter is highly classified for our civilization. No more than 100 people within the entire civilization are aware of it. Of course, I believe Hong Shan knows as well. After learning of this, will you still choose to occupy a civilization? Qin Yu also grew serious. What is it? Lu Wen replied slowly. All your plans are based on the premise of obtaining protection from the Alliance, while secretly maintaining self-development in technology. But what if the Alliance no longer exists? Oh, the Alliance no longer exists? Qin Yu was taken aback. His entire strategy indeed depended on the existence of the Alliance and its control over the galaxy situation. If the Alliance no longer existed, what was the point of planning so much? It would be utterly meaningless. Lu Wen's expression was somewhat complex. Our civilization and the Blue Moon civilization's common main civilization, the Ida civilization, has not appeared for over 1,000 years. Lu Wen looked at Hong Shan, who shared a similarly complex expression. Yes, the Ida civilization is a true level 4 civilization, a super civilization that mastered faster than light travel technology. It governs a vast expanse of space with a radius of over 1,000 light years, and all civilizations within this region must obey its commands and arrangements. However, it has not appeared for over 1,000 years. Moreover, since the disappearance of the Ida civilization, regardless of whether it was destroyed by external enemies or has left, according to our civilization's historical records, more advanced civilizations would typically send another civilization or grant technological upgrades to a certain level 3 civilization to elevate its status. In short, another level 4 civilization should have emerged to control this region. Yet we have waited for over 1,000 years and nothing has happened. Since the Ida civilization disappeared, the galaxy has rapidly entered a state of calm. In the past, even with our level 3 civilization's technological capabilities, we could detect many signs of suspected super civilizations waging wars within the galaxy. But in recent years, all those signs have vanished. The current galaxy is very tranquil. Chapter 200. Time Node Lu Wen and Hong Shan shared all the classified information their civilization possessed without reservation, and Qin Yu's heart grew heavier. This intelligence was something he could never have accessed before. Over 1,000 years ago, human civilization still existed but was only at the early stage of a level 2 civilization, making it natural not to perceive the changes occurring within the galaxy. However, in just over 1,000 years, signals from even more distant places might not have arrived yet. It is still too early to assert that the Milky Way has returned to calm. Qin Yu is aware that while a level 3 civilization has mastered superluminal communication technology, allowing for communication speeds exceeding that of light, it cannot possess the ability to detect certain superluminal particles. In fact, Qin Yu does not even know whether such particles exist. This leads to a phenomenon, since photons travel at the speed of light, which is finite. Any event occurring more than 1 light year away cannot be observed until a year has passed, as it takes that long for the photons carrying information about the event to reach us. Over a span of more than 1,000 years, one can only detect events occurring slightly over 1,000 light years away, and a distance of over 1,000 light years is just a small area within the vast Milky Way, which has a diameter of up to 100,000 light years. Judging the situation of the entire galaxy based on such a small area is somewhat unreasonable. We have probes. As of now, the farthest probe that remains in contact with us has been flying through space at 80 times the speed of light for nearly 3,000 years, covering a distance of 2,400 light years. Qin Yu was taken aback. A level 3 civilization's probe has traveled to a location 2,400 light years away. However, with no resistance in space, The probe can continue to fly due to inertia, and it is not surprising that it can travel such distances given enough time. But this also complicates matters. With the technological capabilities of the Southern Star civilization at level 3, the maximum length for superluminal communication can reach 0.1 light-years. To maintain communication with a probe 2,400 light-years away, 240,000 superluminal relay stations would be needed as intermediaries. If even one of these relay stations fails, the entire communication link will be severed. To enhance communication reliability, the Southern Star civilization would likely construct multiple links. Consequently, the number of relay stations required for a single communication could be as high as 10 times that, totaling 240,000 stations. If we calculate a delay of 1 microsecond per relay station, that amounts to 240,000 microseconds, or 240 seconds, which is 4 minutes. Adding the effects of relativity, the quality of communication is likely not very high. The total time for sending, executing, and receiving a simple command could easily span hours. The complexity of this situation is comparable to that of human civilization during the Earth era when trying to probe Uranus and Neptune. We have launched such probes in different directions. Considering the distances and detection ranges of these probes, our field of vision can extend to about 10,000 light-years. We have confirmed that all suspected traces of war detected within this 10,000 light-year range occurred before the disappearance of the Ithis civilization. There have been no events recorded after their disappearance. Moreover, as time passes, signals from even farther away continue to arrive. Over the course of thousands of years, without exception, there has not been a single event that occurred after the disappearance of the Ithis civilization. It is precisely for this reason that we conclude the current state of the Milky Way is quite peaceful. We cannot ascertain what has transpired within the Milky Way. As a level 3 civilization, we have not even mastered superluminal travel technology, and our operational radius is severely limited. Even if we have launched several probes, we can only confirm some macro-level phenomena, leaving us unable to clarify these details. However, based on all the clues, we cannot help but conclude this judgment. The alliance of stars may have already ceased to exist. We do not believe that all the super civilizations that compose the alliance have been destroyed. That would be too alarming. And we have not observed enough substantial signs of war. In comparison, we think a greater possibility is that they have all hidden away and no longer interfere with external matters. Chun Yu said solemnly. However, to my knowledge, neither of your civilizations has attempted to research new technologies or theories. Hong Shan smiled wryly. The remnants of the alliance still hold sway. The current notion that the alliance no longer exists is merely speculation, and we dare not act recklessly. What if the alliance reemerges unexpectedly? Lu Wen nodded. Our civilization has made the same judgment and choice as the Blue Moon civilization. However, we two civilizations have not been idle. We both chose the Wangliang star system, intending to occupy it, acquire its precious resources, and strengthen our civilization's power, regardless of the future outcome. Whether to continue as subservient or to launch an assault on a higher civilization, strengthening our power is never a mistake. This is the real reason why both sides continuously escalated their efforts, ultimately investing nearly half of their military strength in a great battle in the Wangliang star system. Thus, upon realizing that neither side could defeat the other, and given the severe losses on both sides, it became a reasonable choice to shake hands and jointly develop the Wangliang star system. However, I have emerged and disrupted all of this. Chen Yu fell silent, his mind racing. One thing is certain. There must be some extremely significant and far-reaching events happening in the galaxy. This event has caused changes in the alliance system that has been maintained for countless years, although it is temporarily uncertain whether it has collapsed or just hidden away. Nonetheless, it is certainly a major change. The disappearance of civilizations at level 4 and above is more likely to be a complete concealment, leading the galaxy into a period of tranquility. In the past, although the alliance system was powerful, I was familiar with it, understood its operational rules, and knew what to do. So I was not overly fearful. But now, with this change, everything is different. The situation that had originally become clear has, at this moment, turned murky again. The vast starry sky seems to once again be fraught with danger. Chen Yu asked again, when was the last time the Ida civilization contacted you? When did the galaxy begin to become tranquil? Before 1459. Before 1467. The two provided different answers. As for the specific time when the galaxy began to calm down, it is uncertain, but it was a very rapid process that lasted about 5 years before it quickly settled down. Which 5 years? On this point, both Hong Shan and Lu Wen provided the same data, from 1432 to before 1427. Chun Yu was taken aback, and a tremendous wave surged in his heart. The explosion of Earth, and the period after the explosion when he inexplicably fused with the computer, all fell within these 5 years. A more specific time frame would be 1,428 years, 3 months, 16 days, and 156 hours ago. During this period, the Earth exploded, and inexplicably, it fused with a computer. The fourth-level civilization, the Ithis civilization, disappeared, and the galaxy began to calm down. Chapter 201. Original Sin. You could not determine the exact timeline of the Earth's explosion. His fusion with the computer, the disappearance of the Ithis civilization, and the subsequent calm in the galaxy. However, it was unnecessary to distinguish between them, as their timings were so close that it already indicated some issues. Although there was no evidence, Yu instinctively believed that there must be some connection between the two events. So, what exactly happened in the galaxy at that time? Yu could not know. After calming his mind, Yu continued to ask, "Do you know about the explosion of the Earth in the solar system?" Hong Shan denied this. "We have recorded the yellow dwarf star, the sun, in our star catalog, but we haven't paid much attention to it. Perhaps professional astronomers noticed what happened there, but I do not know. The solar system is not the territory of the Blue Moon civilization, so that is understandable. However, Lu Went should know." As expected, Lu Went said, "I know about this matter. Moreover, our civilization is well aware that there exists a primitive civilization there. Which civilization was responsible for detonating the Earth and destroying human civilization? I do not know." Lu Went shook his head. Detonating a planet is not something a third-level civilization can accomplish. It requires at least a fourth-level civilization. After the Earth exploded, we speculated that it was a higher civilization within the Star Alliance that exterminated human civilization. What else do you know? I do not know anything else. To be honest, this matter does not concern us. It was just a second-level civilization, and being an unregistered one, its destruction was inconsequential. Lu Went's words were straightforward. However, within the Star Alliance system, Yu could understand that such matters were quite normal. Did the Southern Star Civilization know about the existence of human civilization long ago? Why did they not intervene? Lu Went replied, "A third-level civilization has a control radius of over 100 light-years. Here, in this densely populated stellar region, there are more than 10,000 stars within a radius of 100 light-years. We do not have the energy to pay attention to each one. Yes, there is indeed a civilization in the solar system, but so what? For our Southern Star Civilization, it is merely a potential vassal civilization, just an option. If they can develop to the level of a second-level advanced civilization, then we would intervene and incorporate them into the Star Alliance system as our vassal. For us, it would merely mean having another slave civilization at our disposal, just like the previous Mozodi civilization. If they cannot even reach the level of a second-level advanced civilization and self-destruct, then it saves us trouble. Because of this, when the Earth was directly detonated by a higher civilization that appeared out of nowhere, leading to the extinction of its civilization, we did not take it seriously. As long as it wasn't us being exterminated, that was all that mattered." Yu felt that this was the true attitude of advanced civilizations towards lower ones. Whether you live or die, it has nothing to do with us. If you live, we have more slaves. If you die, it doesn't matter. The coldness of the universe was vividly presented before Yu. However, he did not feel anger towards Lu Went. Because everyone is like this, all civilizations are like this. Perhaps even the Mozodi civilization, which has already joined the Alliance. And even the current Southern Star Civilization and Blue Moon Civilization, if one day they encounter a more advanced civilization and face the same fate as humanity, they would also consider it reasonable and justifiable. In this vast galaxy, weakness is the original sin. Yu originally thought that after capturing the high-ranking officials of the Southern Star Civilization and Blue Moon Civilization, he would be able to clarify the matter of Earth's explosion and humanity's extinction. But at this moment, he realized that not only had he not figured it out, but it had also become shrouded in more mystery. Even whether the explosion of Earth was caused by the Alliance remained uncertain. To other civilizations, this was just a trivial matter. But for Yu, it was of utmost importance. For over 1,000 years, Yu still remembered the despair of being alone on the Inghua spaceship, the fear he felt when he witnessed the explosion of Earth, and the memories of vibrant cities, close friends and family from his life on Earth. He remembered every detail of his life. For over 1,000 years, he had not forgotten the hatred in his heart. The countless days and nights, the exhaustive efforts and relentless pursuit of development were not only to become stronger and possess the power to protect himself in this vast galaxy, but also to uncover the truth of that time and seek revenge for his innocent compatriots. At this moment, with more secrets revealed, Yu once again solidified his resolve in his heart. No matter what kind of storms lay ahead, he would march forward with unwavering determination. He would become stronger, strong enough that no one could threaten him again. In the room, Lu Went, Hong Shan, and Yu remained silent. After a long while, Lu Went finally spoke. "So, Your Excellency, now that you are aware of these classified intelligence, what will your plans for the future be?" Yu could confirm that the information provided by these two was true. Thus, he knew that he had to make significant adjustments to his strategic arrangements for the future. The previous strategy of using the Southern Star civilization as a facade and human civilization as the backbone was likely no longer suitable for execution. The future was becoming increasingly unpredictable, and continuing to dominate the Southern Star civilization could not only fail to gain the protection of the Alliance, but might also encounter additional risks. Regardless of what had happened, whether all fourth level and above civilizations had been destroyed, or more likely, had chosen to hide, this was ultimately a reality with reasons behind it. The saying goes, to go with the flow to avoid trouble. If you can hide, so can I. Therefore, it would be wise to find a remote and inconspicuous star system to hide in, where he could focus on developing technology and properly digest the gains made during this time. No matter what, the priority is to develop technology to the level of the Southern Star and Blue Moon civilizations. By that time, with the support of vast engineering capabilities, while one may not claim to be invincible against fourth-level civilizations, they should certainly be unmatched against those below the third level. After some calculations, Chen Yu quickly made up his mind. At that moment, a signal from the VA star system, located 06 light-years away, instantly caught Chen Yu's attention. He was taken aback and immediately adjusted the direction of multiple telescopes to focus on a star in the distant deep space. Pegasus IK, a binary star system located approximately 150 light-years from the Sun. How could this be? Chen Yu was filled with shock. Chapter 202. Supernova in the vastness of space. A massive blue-white star quietly burned. This star was somewhat different from the other spherical stars. At this moment, it was not a perfect sphere, but rather an oblate spheroid. This indicated that there was another celestial body of extremely high mass nearby. It was the gravitational pull of this high-mass body that distorted the star, preventing it from being a perfect sphere. Clearly, this was a binary star system. By carefully searching the surroundings of this star, another celestial body, its companion star, could be found. This companion was a significantly smaller and dimmer body, roughly the size of Earth, with a diameter of about 120,000 kilometers. In contrast, the massive star had a diameter of approximately 2 million kilometers. Typically, when two stars differ so greatly in size, their masses will also vary significantly. Thus, the smaller body would usually orbit the larger one, just like Earth orbits the Sun in the solar system. However, the situation here was quite different. The large and small bodies were actually rotating around each other. Moreover, the larger body was even being pulled into an oblate shape by the smaller body. This indicated that the smaller body had an exceptionally high mass. It had a volume comparable to Earth, but its mass was a staggering 11 times that of the Sun. To put this into perspective, the mass of the Sun is about 330,000 times that of Earth, and its volume is about 1.3 million times that of Earth. At this moment, this small celestial body, with a mass equivalent to 363 million times that of Earth, was compressed into a volume comparable to that of Earth. It was a white dwarf. This is a terrifying monster hidden in the dark universe. It was once a massive star, but over time, as its internal nuclear fuel was gradually consumed, it expanded in size. Eventually, the outer gases were blown away by the internal energy, gradually dispersing into space. The core faced immense pressure, which ultimately compressed the massive mass into its current size, forming a white dwarf. In a sense, a white dwarf could be considered the corpse or remnant of a star. This is the final destiny of stars with a mass below about 8 times that of the Sun. The Sun, which has nurtured human civilization, will also embark on this path after approximately 5 billion years of burning. Its outer gases will be blown away, its core compressed, ultimately transforming into a white dwarf. However, the white dwarf that the Sun can form will have at most half the mass of the current Sun, far less than what exists now. In the vastness of space, a blue-white giant star with about twice the mass of the Sun and a white dwarf with about 11 times the Sun's mass are orbiting each other at a distance of approximately 30 million kilometers, having done so for hundreds of millions of years. Yet, with some unknown changes, the surface temperature of this massive blue-white star suddenly increased, causing its surface color to shift from blue-white to bright blue. Its size also began to rapidly enlarge, resembling a balloon being inflated quickly. An unparalleled ferocious change occurred. Countless violent stellar spots appeared and vanished, only to reappear again. Violent solar prominences extended tens of millions of kilometers high, like whips striking the vast deep space. Intense stellar winds ravaged the surroundings, with energy sufficient to dry out a planet covered entirely by oceans in an instant. As its size rapidly expanded, the outer temperature began to decrease sharply, and its color eventually turned red. It seemed that the disaster had come to an end. After the tumult, it appeared to be slowly calming down. Under normal circumstances, it would indeed gradually settle down. Due to its own gravity, the gas that had dissipated into space would slowly return to it, causing its volume to shrink again, ultimately resembling its previous form at least on a macroscopic level. However, It has a companion star, and the distance between them is quite close, merely 30 million kilometers, which is insignificant in the vast cosmos. The size of this star has expanded so much that, in its outer regions, the gravitational pull exerted by itself is even less than that from its companion star. The consequences are evident. A portion of the stellar material can no longer return to itself and will be drawn toward the massive white dwarf companion. Thus, the transfer of material between the two stars occurs in this manner. From an external perspective, it appears as an exceedingly large star with a long tail emerging from its edge. This tail is remarkably thick, initially measuring millions of kilometers in width as it departs from the star, then rapidly tapering off and ultimately spiraling around to connect to a bright little point. The dead stellar remnant, a white dwarf, is reactivated due to the fusion fuel coming from its companion star. Of course, it cannot revive and become a normal star again. However, this external fuel supply can trigger some peculiar changes. An increase in mass means a strengthening of its own gravity, which also leads to increased pressure and temperature in the core region. It is well known that hydrogen is the easiest element to undergo fusion. It is the primary fuel for stars. The elements following hydrogen require even higher temperatures and pressures to initiate nuclear fusion. White dwarfs are typically composed of carbon and oxygen. Although the internal pressure and temperature of a white dwarf are unimaginably high, they are still insufficient to trigger fusion of these two elements. However, at this moment, the mass from the companion star further aids in elevating the internal temperature and pressure. Thus, at a certain point, the nuclear fusion of carbon and oxygen is initiated. Unlike the slow-burning stars, the fusion occurring in the core of the white dwarf is in an uncontrolled state. This type of fusion is akin to that of a hydrogen bomb, rather than being controllable. Uncontrolled means that, in a very short time, all fusion fuel will undergo fusion simultaneously, releasing an unimaginable amount of energy, enough to completely obliterate a white dwarf. Yes, a celestial body with a mass equivalent to 11 times that of the Sun, yet only the size of Earth, can be shattered into pieces, leaving no trace behind. A catastrophic explosion, arguably the most terrifying disaster in the universe, thus occurs. This is a supernova explosion. Meanwhile, the neutrino telescope set up by Chunyu in the microwave galaxy has detected early signs of this disaster. Before the supernova explosion finally occurs, highly penetrating neutrinos can escape from the interior of the white dwarf first and exhibit some characteristics different from those in a normal state. Therefore, by observing neutrinos, one can predict the occurrence of a supernova explosion in advance. Of course, even if it can be predicted, the warning time will not be long. At most just a few hours. At this moment, the neutrino telescope in the VA galaxy has observed signs of a supernova explosion occurring in the vast deep space. And then, through long-distance communication technology, conveyed the information to Chunyu, who is 0.6 light-years away, in an instant. After that, Chunyu immediately found the optical counterpart of these signals and directed the telescope toward it. Eventually, a name appeared in Chunyu's mind. The galaxy where the supernova explosion is about to occur is called Pegasus IK. No, this may not be entirely accurate. Pegasus IK is about 150 light-years away from the solar system and approximately 162 light-years from the Wangliang triple star system in the VA galaxy. The neutrinos traveling at a speed close to that of light take about 162 years to reach the VA galaxy from Pegasus IK, which means that the actual supernova explosion happened over 160 years ago. At this moment, it is merely the particles carrying the information of this supernova explosion that have arrived here. But how could this be? Pegasus IK is a binary star system, one of which is a subgiant with a bluish-white surface color, while the other is a white dwarf, something Chunyu is well aware of. Although that subgiant is in the latter half of its life cycle, it is far from becoming a red giant and accumulating material from its companion. Without sufficient external material, a supernova explosion cannot occur. It is precisely because there is no risk of a supernova explosion in the coming millions of years that Chunyu has not paid much attention to it. He believes that other civilizations in this star region must also not be making such preparations. Why did that subgiant star suddenly expand? This cannot be explained by natural evolution or phenomena. What happened in that galaxy? Chunyu couldn't figure it out, but this question could be pondered later. The urgent matter now is to respond to this sudden event. The Wangliang galaxy and the Wei galaxy are located 162 light-years away from Pegasus IK, which is about 15 trillion kilometers. At such a vast distance, it seems unlikely to be affected by that explosion. Usually, this is indeed the case. However, this explosion is not ordinary. It is a supernova explosion, one of the most intense physical processes in the universe. The entire galaxy consists of about 200 billion stars. When a supernova explosion occurs, its brightness can rival the total brightness of all 200 billion stars in the galaxy. The energy released by a single supernova explosion is comparable to the total energy emitted by a star like the Sun over its entire lifespan. A star like the Sun can burn for about 10 billion years. All the energy radiated over those 10 billion years would erupt in an instant. How terrifying would that be? Even if Chunyu is already a bona fide Type 3 civilization. And even if the most powerful human battleship he possesses is placed tens of trillions of kilometers away from the supernova explosion site, it would undoubtedly be vaporized in an instant, completely disappearing from the universe. One might even make this analogy. The most powerful hydrogen bomb ever created during the Earth era, the Tsar Bomba, has a yield of 50 megatons of TNT. The explosion test reportedly caused the Eurasian continent to shift by a few millimeters. The distance from Earth to the Sun is 1.5 billion kilometers. If such a powerful bomb were detonated right in front of a person, how would that compare to a supernova explosion occurring at the position of the Sun? Conventional thinking would suggest that an ordinary person would choose the Tsar Bomba, as it is right in front of them. No matter how powerful the supernova explosion is, it is still 1.5 billion kilometers away, too far. However, calculations show that even a supernova explosion 1.5 billion kilometers away would be millions of times brighter than the Tsar Bomba detonated right in front of someone's eyes. This is how powerful a supernova explosion is. Even Xinyu, over 160 light-years away, must face it with full force. At this moment, in the room, Lu Went and Hong Shan were still waiting for Chunyu's response. They had no idea how much information Chunyu had received in that brief moment, how many calculations he had made, and how many decisions he had reached. The robot representing Chunyu stood up and said seriously, in light of such a significant change in the galaxy, continuing to occupy the Southern Star or the Blue Moon civilization poses too great a risk. I have decided that human civilization should also hide and develop slowly. However, an unexpected event has occurred at this moment. Even if all suspected civilizations of level 4 and above were to disappear, I would no longer choose to take charge of the Southern Star or the Blue Moon civilizations. Oh, an unexpected event? The two were taken aback at the same time. Pegasus IK, Chunyu slowly said. I just observed that the white dwarf star has undergone a supernova explosion. It is expected that in another 6 months, the explosion's energy will reach the Wangliang 3-star system where we are currently located. What? A supernova explosion? This is impossible. Impossible. Hong Shan and Lu Went stood up in shock, their speech somewhat incoherent. How could this be possible? That is a very stable star system. Even if there was an explosion, it would be at least 1 million years later. I suspect it is due to the influence of a super civilization. Here are my observational data. Chunyu presented some summarized data before them. Even though the two were not scientists, they could understand it. At the same time, both knew that Chunyu had no reason to deceive them. Upon seeing the data, their breathing became rapid, and they eventually sat down dejectedly. Chunyu slowly said, it seems your speculation that the galaxy has returned to calm is incorrect. At least this time. It is almost certain that it is due to the influence of a higher civilization. Otherwise, a supernova explosion would not occur. Chunyu did not change his decision to remain hidden. Regardless, the inference that some significant change, unknown to him, is happening in the galaxy is indeed true. Taking Pegasus IK as the core, all star systems within a radius of 500 light-years are no longer suitable for civilizations of level 3 and below to survive. For the future of human civilization, I have decided to do my utmost to gather resources and build spaceships in the Wangliang 3-star system, and then set sail towards the edge of the galaxy, escaping further away from the Pegasus IK star system. Hong Shan and Lu Went's bodies trembled slowly, cold sweat dripping continuously. In the face of this unprecedented natural disaster, all past disputes and calculations seemed to become insignificant in an instant. Suddenly, Lu Went and Hong Shan moved at the same time. They slowly stood up and then knelt in front of the robot representing Chunyu, one in front and the other behind. Chapter 204. Quoted during this time, they had also learned some aspects of human civilization's culture and etiquette, knowing that kneeling is the most sincere gesture in human civilization. Looking at the two kneeling on the ground, Chunyu remained silent. Lu Went trembled and said, Your Excellency, I beseech you, allow the Southern Star civilization to join your ranks. Hong Shan also said, Please accept the Blue Moon civilization as well. The energy released by the supernova explosion is immense. Even a level 3 civilization capable of interstellar travel would not be able to withstand it. The Southern Star system and the Blue Moon system are slightly farther from Pegasus IK than the Wangliang 3-star system, but not by much. They will also truly bear the wrath of this supernova. This energy will not cause the extinction of civilization in an instant. At the moment energy arrives, to the naked eye, there will be hardly any noticeable impact except for the appearance of a bright star. However, the arrival of such immense energy will severely deteriorate the interstellar environment, significantly increasing the intensity of electromagnetic radiation and ionizing radiation across various wavelengths. This can even indirectly affect the environment of stars, making it more volatile, which in turn impacts the climate of gaseous planets, worsening their conditions and greatly increasing the difficulty of resource acquisition. It may also affect life-bearing planets, disrupting their ecological structures and leading to mass extinctions. Particularly, while a supernova explosion occurs in an instant, its subsequent effects are continuous. The impact of a supernova explosion on nearby galactic environments is somewhat analogous to the climate changes on Earth that have triggered numerous mass extinctions. This year, the average temperature might have dropped by only 1 degree compared to last year, which is imperceptible to living beings and hardly worth mentioning. Then, next year's average temperature might drop by another degree, continuing year after year. As the temperature consistently decreases, the environment gradually worsens for life forms. Eventually, after reaching a critical limit, a species may no longer adapt to the environment and face extinction. At this moment, the supernova explosion poses such a threat to the civilizations of the Southern Star and Blue Moon. The spatial environment is becoming increasingly harsh. The likelihood of instrument and spacecraft malfunctions is rising, resource acquisition is becoming more difficult, and the incidence of malignant diseases among living beings is increasing, with each generation showing poorer physical conditions. Technological means can delay this trend but cannot reverse it. Within 1,000 years, the two great civilizations will inevitably decline and may even regress to a secondary civilization. The quality of the newly born population can no longer sustain the vast knowledge required for a tertiary civilization. If the effects of this supernova explosion have not dissipated by then, they can only face the ultimate demise. The only way to avoid decline is to escape from this place. The farther away from the supernova explosion, the better, relying on distance to mitigate its effects. However, for a typical tertiary-level communal intelligent civilization, it is impossible to possess sufficient industrial capacity to build enough spacecraft to evacuate the entire population. With nearly 100 billion people, how many spacecraft would be needed? Moreover, the effects of the supernova explosion have already begun, and the spatial environment has turned hostile. Undertaking large-scale construction in such conditions would be tantamount to hastening their demise. This is the grim reality faced by the Southern Star and Blue Moon civilizations at this moment. Only Chunyu might have the capability to escape under such circumstances, possessing sufficient engineering resources to carry enough intelligent beings, thereby saving the Southern Star and Blue Moon civilizations. In response to the pleas of the two, Chunyu remained silent. He understood that with this event, centered around Pegasus IK, almost all civilizations within hundreds of light years would face extinction. If there were still human civilization at this moment, it too would inevitably perish. After a moment of contemplation, Chunyu finally shook his head. I cannot save the Southern Star and Blue Moon civilizations. Your civilization has too many people, and the number of ships you need to manufacture is excessive, leading to a significant demand for resources that I cannot accommodate. The two individuals turned pale and fell silent. However, I can save a few. Chunyu shifted his tone. I am offering a quota of 30 million for the Nanxing civilization, while the Blue Moon civilization will have a quota of 15 million. If these 45 million people arrive here before I leave the Wangliang Triple Star system, I can integrate them into human civilization, allowing them to become the Dwarven and Blue Moon races, and then take them to a safe place. Your civilization will continue in this manner. As for who gets selected to come here, I will not interfere. You can set your own criteria. My only requirement is that half of them must be scientists. You are all influential figures within your civilization. How to persuade your civilization's leaders to implement this plan depends on you. Hongshan murmured. Why do we only have 15 million? Chunyu replied calmly. Otto, Yingguang, and others have made significant contributions to human civilization. Hongshan fell silent. Lewent, however, was somewhat excited. Although Chunyu offered a total of 45 million, he knew that even if this plan was ultimately accepted and executed by the two major civilizations, he would likely only be able to accept around 30 million, with about half being qualified scientists. He didn't plan to disclose the reasons for this to the two men at this time. If the total reaches 30 million, and at least 15 million of them are scientists who understand the foundational theories of a third-level civilization, it would be beneficial for Chunyu. If the leaders of the two major civilizations reject this plan, it would certainly be a loss, but Chunyu wouldn't be overly concerned. It would just mean spending a few hundred years to conduct research on his own. Compared to the overall strategy at this moment, spending a few extra 100 years is something he can reluctantly accept. I will personally assist you in repairing the broken communication links. It is expected that in 4 months, you will be able to restore contact with your home civilization. After 6 months, the energy from the supernova explosion will arrive, and it is anticipated that all the superluminal communication relay stations in this star region will be affected and damaged. In other words, you will only have 2 months to persuade your home civilization. How to manage this time is up to you. Now, you may leave. The two individuals left the room in a daze. The little alcohol they had consumed earlier had long since turned into sweat. Following this, without any hesitation, they quickly returned to their respective bases to hold meetings and gather the remaining personnel to discuss. At this moment, this news was also announced by Chun Yu and relayed to the intelligent beings that had already joined human civilization. Otto Yingguang and others from the dwarven race were naturally summoned by Lewent to discuss the plan, while Maju hurriedly found Chun Yu. Leader, please help save the Mozodi civilization. Chun Yu smiled and said, Maju, your three-eyed race has been with me the longest and has made tremendous contributions to the development of human civilization. Therefore, I will treat your Mozodi civilization differently. Thus, I grant your three-eyed race a population quota of 100 million. Chapter 205, Balancing Benefits and Risks 100 million? Hearing this number suddenly, Emoji